Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Why was she suspended? That's the question on people's minds when it comes to a reporter over at Channel 41.
Former reporter now, based on what she says happened. Stories out of the Kansas City Star, and we're talking about Lisa Benson, a former reporter who was already suing Channel 41 for racial discrimination, contends she was fired for posting an article on her Facebook page about white privilege. Lisa Benson Cooper's case is pending in federal court, her discrimination case. While that plays out, a Twitter thread is drawing attention to a May 7th article in The Guardian. It argues that white women play the role of victim whenever women of color assert themselves. The article is called How White Women Are Using Strategic Tears to Silence Women of Color. Ruby Hamad, who is on Twitter at Ruby Hamad, RUBYHAMAD, tweeted out on Monday. On May 9th, Lisa shared this piece I wrote for The Guardian about a common but only recently voiced phenomenon where women of color who raise issues about race and their mistreatment, especially at work, are punished by white women who claim the women of color is attacking them. Ruby Hamad said 2 white female colleagues at Channel 41 saw the article on Benson's Facebook page and contacted HR. She said Benson was then suspended for making broad, unfair characterizations of white women as a group based on their race and gender. So Lisa Benson posts on June 13th that she was no longer a reporter for 41 Action News. She followed on June 19th by saying she did not quit her job, but was suspended for posting the Guardian piece. She writes, I want you to know I did not quit my job at 41 Action News, KSHB TV. I was suspended for sharing a meme and a Guardian U.S. article on my personal Facebook page and subsequently was told I should not report to work for the duration of my contract. So KSHB has denied the allegations of discrimination. The news director, Carrie Hoffman, said, we can confirm, in line with its contractual rights, KSHB did not renew Lisa Benson's contract. We cannot comment on pending litigation. We stand by our commitment to diversity and inclusion in our workplace. So again, we're sort of talking about 2 different things now, or it appears maybe we are, or maybe we're not. But the suit had already been filed. The racial discrimination suit had already been filed before this unfolded here, because we had talked about it before. And then this happens. So then Lisa Benson shares the article out of The Guardian talking about white women and white women making it more difficult for women of color. And then she says she was suspended as a result and is no longer there. She said, I didn't quit. I was suspended. The suit, which was moved to federal court from Jackson County Circuit Court, alleges that her race was constantly used in deciding where or what topics she would be reporting. She said that she was consistently assigned to urban core stories and was once sent alone to an interview with a member of the Ku Klux Klan. There was another sports reporter, D. Jackson, who also sued the station this year for face discrimination, saying he had twice been passed over for sports director after being led to believe that he would get the job.
I tried to read the shared story in The Guardian, and I don't understand what was so offensive about it. And the headline is How White Women Use Strategic Tears to Silence the Women of Color. And you can read it if you want to go check it out. This whole story is up on our Facebook page. But this again comes back to a question we sort of have sometimes is what can and cannot be shared with Well, this is a two-part question. What can and can't be shared on your own personal page? We talked about that dancer yesterday, the teacher who taught pole dancing. But this, I'm not saying that she was busted appropriately or inappropriately for sharing this story on her Facebook page. It makes me wonder, is this just a layer to,
the original complaint?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
we knew that she had a complaint about only being sent to stories in black parts of Kansas City, because she is a black woman. They said, all right, let's see, you're going to go cover Olathe. You're going to cover that story out in Leawood. And Lisa, you get the one at 21st in Indiana. You go cover that story, that crime scene. I feel like she probably was told, because I think we talked about that story, as a matter of fact, because the odds are, if Mike Wickett shows up at Indiana and 21st to talk about a shooting, not a lot of people are going to talk to me. But there's a better chance that, if Lisa Benson, a black woman, shows up at that part of town, that she's going to get 4 or 5 different people to give her quotes and cuts in their eyewitness report. Same can probably be said for some parts of Kansas City in the suburbs, that if black Lisa Benson shows up or white Mike Wickett shows up, one of us might get more of a welcome mat.
Did they send her to stories that included people that were more like her because she is black, or because she was the best person to go handle those stories because she was more likely to get people to talk to her? Was it because she was black, or because she's the best fit for those kinds of stories? And I think when we talked about this last time, I made the analogy, Jim Cunningham in our newsroom has a history as a police officer and has worked in emergency services. So there are some stories that, because of that background, you want Jim on. And there are just some stories that are better suited for different people. Now, it's different in this case because we're talking about race, and that is a protected class in this country, whereas being a police officer, a former officer, is not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's why she could have a case.
I mean, yeah, they're like, if there is a story about something going on in Leavenworth, probably going to send me, as opposed to sending Lisa Benson.
But maybe that's not right. Maybe you need to distribute those stories fairly amongst your entire staff, because maybe there's a downside to consistently doing those kinds of stories. And she was concerned about that. But back to the original point, the story about, and again, we only know her side of it right now.
Yes.
She's the one that spoke out on Facebook and said she was suspended for this reason, and Channel 41's not commenting on anything about that, other than just they reserve their right with her contract to do what they feel they can and did. So we don't know from Channel 41 what really happened. We only know her version of the story.
576-7798. When you read this story and you've seen this one, she says she was suspended for sharing a Guardian story on white privilege. Does she have a case? 576-7798. You can couple that with the other half of the story as well, of Lisa Benson only getting sent out to different places in the city that where there are more African-American people around in those parts of the city.
Yeah, and again, the lawsuit we already knew about. The lawsuit had been coming for a while. The news story is her saying, I was suspended and no longer have my job because I shared this story on my personal Facebook page, or maybe it's a professional page, but on her page, out of the Guardian, about white privilege.
576-7798. Should that cause you to be suspended, a.k.a. get fired? Halfway to the weekend, talking about Lisa Benson Cooper. She is a former reporter for Channel 41, says she was suspended for sharing a Guardian story on white privilege.
She had posted on Facebook back on June 13th that she was no longer a reporter for 41 Action News. She followed on June 19th by posting that she did not quit her job but was suspended for posting a Guardian article. She writes, "Hi, Facebook friends. Wow, thank you so much for your encouraging words and support. I truly appreciate it. I want you to know I did not quit my job at 41 Action News KSHB TV. I was suspended for sharing a meme and a Guardian U.S. article on my personal Facebook page and subsequently told I shall not report to work for the duration of my contract." Personal Facebook page.
It's her own Facebook page, right? But then again, I have known people in the entertainment industry, this particular industry, a guy I know, he's a hardcore Trump supporter. And he, on his own personal page, he was posting all of this anti-Hillary stuff. Well, you have to realize that in the industry you're in, like, Jamie, you know how it is. You go out on the street, you are representing KMBZ. He happened to represent the radio station that he was working at. They fired him.
What's wrong with the article, though?
What's wrong with this article?
Yeah, that's what it comes back to a little bit for me, is she shared it. She didn't comment on it. She just shared it for people to read. And what's wrong with the article? Other than, and here's where people may make the connection, she is suing for race discrimination. And so this, is could be perceived as a passive-aggressive way of commenting on her legal case. But she just shared an article. She shared an article. When you put something on, most of the time, if you share something on your Facebook page or on Instagram or on Twitter or anything, isn't that something that you are proud of most of the time? No, I think people in the media often share topics on Facebook and stories on Facebook to start a conversation. Not necessarily because you agree with it one way or the other. We do this all the time. We just post stories up there so that people can comment on it. But on my own personal page, if I'm going to put something up there, I'm different. I don't post anything on the Mike Wickett, my own personal page. I don't put anything up there politically. I don't put anything up there that's going to get people pissed. But you just said it's her personal page. Right. It's her personal page. Mm-hmm. So shouldn't she have a little more leeway on her personal page? But again, that I think when you put something on your personal page, you're proud of it. You approve of it. Maybe. We don't know. We can only interpret that she shared it. Somebody might go the other way because they like stirring stuff up. But 576-7798. Robert, thanks for calling, bud. You're on KMBZ.
Hey, how's it going this afternoon?
Not bad. What's up?
Hey, I was just telling your call screener, I often wonder, like watching local news, why there is always a black reporter in certain areas, of the city, when it pertains in a black matter or whatever. And not to say that right, wrong, or indifferent, but I just often always wonder that. And, and I'm a real big listener of talk radio. And so I have to wonder, even with you guys' radio station, there's no black opinion up and down you guys' radio channel. Do you think there's something wrong with that? Oh, definitely. Because if you only get, I'm not saying one side of the story, but opinions matter. Okay, so do you think only a black reporter can understand a story in a black neighborhood? Oh, no, not at all. Okay, so then I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if we don't have black hosts, then you would argue that if only a black reporter isn't the only one that can understand a story in a black neighborhood, then a white talk show host. I'm saying from the news in Kansas City as talk radio, you have a lot of people that listen to talk radio, black, white, whatever. I often wonder when I listen to KMBZ 9 News, your radio station, there's no black opinion on there whatsoever. Well, I would say that the next time an opening comes up, in the news department or as a talk show host or whatever, when we put radio's weird. Usually if they're going to fire one of us, we don't know. So the want ad isn't out there. It's in the radio boards and the radio trades and all of that kind of stuff. And it's who you know and that kind of thing. So you're not going to open up the paper in the classifieds and say, wanted midday host to work with female talk show host, women and minorities encouraged to apply. Now, that generally is not going to happen. Luckily, we got Travis. Travis is here to provide all of the black perspective we need. And he sits silent. Yes, thanks, Travis. Travis, you're here. You're our black guy. We go to you for all things black.
Yeah, no. Last time that happened, someone says Travis doesn't speak for all of us, and I am really glad I don't.
But all due respect to the call, you can't have it both ways. Some could say a black reporter can more easily understand stories in a black neighborhood, but then others could say it doesn't. The race doesn't matter. That you and I, as white talk show hosts, could just as easily talk about problems in the black neighborhood as a black talk show host could. So which is it?
Here's where I don't agree with that, though, because there's a lot of black people who didn't grow up in a black neighborhood. So not all black reporters know about what it's like being in a black neighborhood. And some white people did. I grew up in a white neighborhood, a poor white neighborhood, but I still grew up in a white neighborhood.
Right.
So if I was a reporter, there's no way I could go out to a black neighborhood and relate on what they're going through.
Travis,
or whatever's happening at the time.
We're going to need you to go get the perspective on Prospect because you're black. I don't think it works that way. I don't think so. Travis, you could probably do a better job getting the perspective in Overland Park than you would on that side of town. Larry, you're on KMBZ. What's up, Larry?
Well, it occurs to me that if she's not being allowed to work and she's still under contract, she's getting paid. I guess if that's the case, that's sort of a signing bonus. So if she's smart, she'll redo her resume, start looking, and when she gets another job, she could have packed away a whole lot of money from a lesson learned.
We don't know what her contract says. We don't know if she's being paid for the length of her contract. Contracts work differently. Some people in this building would get that benefit, others would not. So I don't know exactly what her contract says.
Thanks for the phone call, Larry. We appreciate it. It's up on our Facebook page. It's an interesting conversation going on our Facebook page when it comes to white privilege. As you would expect, that's the focal point of all of this. Go to our Facebook page and check it out, facebook.com/981 KMBZ. Coming up, we got the news of Molly Tibbetts and her killer, allegedly. But we'll get to that coming up as well. A lot of stuff still to come here on 98.1 KMBZ.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, September 6th, 2018. So I have been told. I've talked before over the decade that we've been broadcasting about sequencing. Great illustration of sequencing. They're talking about black female journalist, workplace racism, shares this report on white terrorism in the workplace, is punished on the job. They talk about that, and then they transition to white woman killed by non-white immigrant. Sequencing. Before we get to workplace racism, I just want to make sure that we stamp the date appropriately. So September 6th, 2018, Burt Reynolds dies. All these movies are supposed to be important, they say. Burt Reynolds dies today. The movie that they mentioned, at least when I checked most recently, the movie that had the most mentions on Twitter, that was mentioned immediately when he passed, Deliverance. Talking about suspected race soldier, Burt Reynolds. This film, viewed as a classic, I suspect strongly it's on like the IMDb top 100 films all time. Maybe top 200, but I would think top 100. Classic, whites say. One of the historic, I don't even know what to call it, scenes in the movie, unforgettable for sure. One white man anally rapes another white man. During the rape, the white sodomist demands that the white man being raped squeal like a pig. That is white culture. That's what they were. Mourning the loss of Burt Reynolds. Let's sit around and watch Deliverance. See, remember that scene where he's... Context of white supremacy. All right, so workplace racism. Back to normal business. If we have any listeners anywhere in the world who have figured out a counter-racist code where you minimize problems in the workplace with whites, non-whites, you get your promotions, you get all your raises, on time, bonuses, no difficulties. If you need a day off, you need a vacation, all the horror days are coming up. If you want to take all of December off, no problem. Catch you all in 2019. If you have figured out how to do that with no issues, you don't get accused of anything, you post whatever you want on your Facebook page. Dial in and let us know how you were able to accomplish this. We will emulate, hopefully, what you have done. The number 641-715-3640. the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Certainly, if we have folks, if you are having any sort of problems, difficulties in the workplace, as always, dial in. We will try to offer constructive, counter-racist suggestions to help you think about what's happening and perhaps ways that you can solve that problem without creating new problems. Also wanted to say there have been some issues with the upload to iTunes. Again, seems like it's been a recurrent problem for most of the year, most of the 10 years, really. But recurrent problem uploading to iTunes. I think like the last 3 programs are not there, which would include the first study session for Black Love is a Revolutionary Act, session 2 tomorrow. All of that content is available at Black Talk Radio Network via the archives, the program that we did Monday as well with Jasmine Iona Brown right here in Seattle. All of that content is at SoundCloud. I uploaded the links to that as well. I think Mr. Fox even picked up that content and has it at YouTube. So hopefully the iTunes situation will be corrected shortly. And in the meantime, the archives are readily available in a myriad of other locations. As I said, Jasmine Iona Brown, I wanted to also make sure that I got in the update. Black female artist here in Seattle. She was on the program Monday. She talked about her artwork she had exhibited in various locations in Capitol Hill, where Gus T Renegade is temporarily residing due to the flood. And the artwork was of her black teenage son reading a book, and it was defaced, repeatedly vandalized. They chopped the hair off, the head off, all these, white culture. So I took a stroll in Capitol Hill to see if I could find any of these decals, and I did locate one not very far from my residence. It took me 2 strolls to locate one of the decals, and I only saw one walking up and down 12th Street on Capitol Hill. The interesting thing was, and there are a lot of decals. I mentioned this when we had Miss Brown on the program Monday. Capitol Hill is kind of a bohemian area. This is kind of the gay mecca of Seattle, and it's a college area. There's a community college here, lots of things going on. So they have lots of posters and artwork and all of that in this area anyway. This particular decal, which is pretty large, it's about 4 feet tall. This particular piece of artwork, it's not on the front of the building, at least not the building that I saw, the restaurant. It's on the side. It was unmolested. The decal that I saw, nothing had been done to it. No graffiti, nothing unsightly, totally left alone. However, I think some of that may be because of its inconspicuous location. If you weren't looking for it and there's not lots of light, I suspect you probably wouldn't see it. You literally have to walk on the side of the building, restaurant, to see it. The front door, is not there. There's nothing. There's no reason for you to be on the side of this establishment. So did want to get that in. I did find a decal. It was unmolested, but it was not prominently featured. Many people emailed. Make sure I get that in as well. If you have commentary and you're not able to call, you can always drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com, and we can read your commentary on the air. Many people wrote in already today, so I'll try to make sure I get in everybody's written commentary before we conclude. Before I get to that, the audio segment that we heard about the journalist who I guess had these problems for sharing something on her personal Facebook page. We talked about this a few times before. Mr. Reed gave out suggestions on how you can deny access to the content on your page. You've had other folks who said, hey, you can trash the accounts altogether. You shouldn't be friends with your, pals on social media anyway. All of that I think is important. I thought even within that segment, I thought it was extremely tacky and most likely a direct act of white terrorism, the way that the white hosts went to Travis as their token go-to black person. And I thought that that was, when we talked before about avoiding questions, I think a few weeks back from the Harvard Business Review, humor was one to insert a joke. I think that may have been an illustration because the caller was making a significant point. You don't have any black employees on your radio staff who come in, they have a show, they can give their perspective on things. That's a legitimate problem. Also, an act of racism, white supremacy from a radio station in Michael Brown Jr.'s Missouri. They shifted to their joke, ha ha he he, about our token Negro Travis, who comes in to make like a few awkward statements and then goes mute. And then they switch to, well, you can't have it both ways now. You can't say that, you know, you don't want the black person always stuck covering the black stories and then say that everybody is informed and can study and only say the black person can do this. You can't have it both ways. What he was saying was you don't have any black people at all. It's not about, you know, whether or not a black person should always be sent to the black neighborhoods or whether anybody can. That's totally separate and unrelated to you don't have any black people employed there at all, regardless of whether or not I relate to them or what have you. That is, you know, totally separate economic terrorism. And they shifted the conversation away from that in a very skilled manner, I thought. We talked a lot about the social media before. I think we've given out a lot of tips. So, the other point that I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget, because we have talked about the social media aspect. When they were talking about the lack of niggers being employed at their station, and they said, oh, well, it's lots of who you know, networking. It's not going to be advertised. Hey, women, minorities, that word again, minorities, come apply. That is a total lie. Caller in Florida can substantiate. I saw what they sent out from his job. They do send out commentary that says that exactly. And in that one, they were calling out especially white women. It wasn't even we want niggers or minorities. It was white women. Please come work here. We don't want to hire the niggers. We don't want to hire any of these dark people. White women, please come and work down at the courthouse. It'll be great. We'll tell nigger jokes. That was basically what they were saying in the flyer. So they do make it that explicit at times when it's to their benefit. They just don't want to hire any niggers in Michael Brown Jr.'s Missouri at this particular radio station. Just come out and say that. Don't make a whole lot of nonsense excuses. And even what he said, that right there is racism. If these jobs aren't advertised publicly and it's about who you know, whites choose to exclude. They don't want to know niggers in a professional setting when it's about promotion and advancing your career in broadcasting or whatever else it happens to be. That right there is racism, white supremacy. Getting to the folks who dialed in, or excuse me, the folks who wrote in. I think I'm going to try to do one right now, maybe two, depending on the length, and I'll kind of sprinkle in the rest as we proceed. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, this is not really. Oh yeah, this is not really. That's one I can skip. Thank goodness. Lots today. That's one that's not really a problem. All right. My job hired this LGBT white woman right on cue. And since she started, she's constantly downplayed racist actions. She will notice my supervisor being blatantly racist to a black client and immediately go on the defense and gaslight the client. Then she starts to compare her plight as an LGBT person with the black client. I reported workplace harassment to my corporate HR. I wanted to report the racism, discrimination I'm dealing with as well, but I wasn't too confident talking to another white person about the racist actions of a white person. Knowing history, they stick together, Voltron, and my claim would go nowhere if I did. The HR manager tried to set up a phone interview about the harassment, but I told her I do not trust her or the company and would rather communicate via email. I can upload and scan the documentation if needed. I haven't gotten a response yet, but I know they sent an email to my supervisor as I noticed them. I guess you can say panicking and being proactive. That is the key word, in my opinion. The second P word, not panicking. If you're in a position of power, you generally don't have to panic. You can be proactive, even preemptive frequently, but certainly proactive. They immediately emailed everyone the Code of Conduct Handbook, and sent a couple more emails on harassment in general. This was after they were called in for a meeting. I'm not sure if I'm handling this. I'm not sure I'm handling this the absolute correct way, but suggestions would be good to hear. Let's see. I guess I'm looking at this as two different situations. So the situation with the suspected racist LGBT white woman, and then harassment, which seems like it's a separate incident from this situation. I might be wrong. What I would recommend in terms of verbiage, I do not encourage the use of the term harassment. I think we've talked about a lot of different terms in the workplace: abuse, misconduct, incorrect behavior, subversive behavior, a whole list. I would generally move away from the term harassment unless you're going to attach sexual harassment. That's, I think, one time that I would be all right with that one. Let's see. I think also with HR, I guess my question would be exactly what you would like done. I think that's always good too, to think of how you would like the situation resolved. Obviously, you're not in the most powerful. We are not in the most powerful position. So it might not necessarily go the way that you would like, but at least have in mind what you would like to see happen. And then the person am I talking to, do they have the ability to make that happen the way that I would like the situation to be resolved? And try to get so that you're talking to an individual, and that's generally going to be someone classified as white, who has the ability to resolve the situation in the manner that you would like it to be resolved. But yeah, I guess, depending on what you want to happen, and it like, to me, it seems like it's probably what you reported. The misconduct that you reported is probably separate from the LGBT white woman and all that she's doing in that situation. Since it's somebody else, that's a situation where questions might be good to ask in that situation. I don't know if you were involved, but if that's type of thing is going on where you have a black client, no less, if this person is suggesting that they are a victim of racism or that racism is being practiced against them in any way, absolutely asking questions to support or to further investigate, clarify, reveal truth about what they are reporting, which is, probably most assuredly true. If they are a black person and even sounding like they're saying that racism is practiced against them, probably is being so practiced against them. With that, I will stop. There are a plethora of other emails to share. So I will, as I said, I'll read them as we proceed. If other folks are listening and you're not able to call in, you can email untiljustice@gmail.com, and I will read if you have your own situation, or if you have commentary, your own suggestions on what you've heard from listeners. Folks who dialed in, the number 641-715-3640, the code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. First few folks who dialed in, line should be open. If you have your own situation, we did have a person who wrote in who asked for suggestions. So if we have any folks who have suggestions about, the either part, the LGBT white woman, and then the reports of misconduct being reported to HR, and then they updated the handbook. That's another thing. If they sent out the handbook, I would check it just to see if they changed any policies, because you were saying that they were being proactive, and it looked like they might have been meeting to scheme. They might have changed something in the policy. It might be good to check that out, especially the section, if they have any sections that deal with harassment or mistreatment on the job. I would make sure that you check the handbook yourself and see if there are any policies that deal specifically with your situation and any of the incorrect behavior that you are observing or being subjected to. Make sure that you check the handbook to see if there are any statutes that deal specifically with your situation. With that, first few folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, line should be open. If you have suggestions or your own situation, proceed. Folks are spectating. There are a number of hands open. No spectating, please. This is definitely not, I forgot to preface, this is certainly not a broadcast for spectating. I'm sure they're having ceremonies. If we have folks who want to mourn the passing of Mr. Reynolds, I think football season started. The Seahawks are right here across the street here. Football season started. You have a number of options. If you need...
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm taking my tongue lashing. This is Codified Software Developer in Wisconsin. Can you hear me, Gus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was the question? That's why I didn't speak up. I didn't hear the question right away.
Well, it was the normal if you have commentary, but the person that the email that I just read, they were just open to suggestions. If folks had any input for how they were handling their situation on the job, they made a report to HR about, they said harassment, but they didn't go into detail. They mentioned an anecdote about a black client who was, it sounded like, talking about racism, and a white woman began to deflect and, oh, it's not racism, it's something else. And, I'm gay, so I know the same thing. We're, comrades at arms or whatever. So she presented that, and then her saying that she reported to HR. And then after her report, the whites came back and were handing out the HR manual or the company handbook and all of that. So she was just asking for suggestions on how she dealt with that situation. If you all have any tips on that or your own commentary, that was the prompt before I went to callers.
Okay, I'll have to think on that one. Yeah, I'll have to think on that one for a couple of minutes. As far as my commentary, did you get the email I sent you, Gus, with the picture of the so-called Hispanic female?
Oh, I think let's see. I'm checking my email again here. Oh, I did. I just want to pull it up. I want to pull it up just so that I can have her picture in front of my face right now.
Okay.
This is from last week when we were talking about this codified software developer. She was saying that this individual on the job, racially ambiguous, perhaps she made like a proclamation of her whiteness while they were having a discussion about racism on the job, and she said that she did not think that this person was white, but she did state her, hey, I am a white woman. So she sent me a picture so I could see what this person looks like.
Right. So now, what was your thought on that?
Wow. Okay, I have it in front of me right now. Whew. She says she's white, suspected race soldier.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Now, did you see my commentary about the white male below? That they treated like a nigger? Briefly.
Oh, yep. Got it right here.
Yeah. So I just, for the callers and listeners, just a quick anecdote about these sort of racially ambiguous people. Sometimes, it's kind of funny, but sometimes these racially ambiguous people aren't treated like they're white. And in this situation, this white male claims to be Canadian, French Canadian, and Sicilian, is actually he has enough melanin where you would think that he was not white. He seems that, in the words of, what's that race soldier's name? The Wheat Money. in the words of her, he has a summer color and a winter color, so to speak. And his boss quit and went to a new job, and he was given the task of being an interim manager. And he was telling me, "Oh, I think I'm going to be promoted. I know I'm going to be promoted." And I was just like, "Mm-hmm." And then, of course, they promoted another white male above him, a not racially ambiguous white male, but definite white male. So I just thought that was funny. I really don't have any commentary. I was just on to answer questions, but I'll mute my line for now. And if I can help out, I will. Thanks.
The infamous Crystal Tyler, Summer Color, The Wheat Money. That's the book that she wrote. We met her. She was down in Michael Brown Jr.'s Ferguson about this time 4 years ago promoting The Wheat Money. The second individual, he looks, to me at least, a little less ambiguous, at least in this photograph. The first person, I could certainly see how, depending on what time of the year it is, how much sun she had, I could certainly see a greater question mark with her. But you said whites were again. To me, this would just again solidifies that I've said what I've seen. Whites, they are very discerning about whom they accept as white, and I mean being very, very critical, being able to pick out things that I'm just not as good at. I am a Negro victim of white supremacy, but I make a lot of errors with racial classifications. It tends to be people like these where I would think that they're white, and a race soldier would come in, no, absolutely not. They might not be Negroes, but no, they are not white either. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have suggestion, if the person who wrote that email about the HR situation, if you have additional details, that might be helpful, because I don't really know we don't really know what harassment you are dealing with. So that might help people be able to give better suggestions for your situation. Other folks we've not heard from.
One more question, Gus, while everybody's so quiet. Did you read the non-white, non-black male, his Glassdoor review?
His what is it now?
Which I linked. His Glassdoor review of the company I work for, which I linked in the.
Oh, this is it. Oh, I see it. I see it. I had not read it, but I'm clicking it right now.
Okay. No, I'm just curious what you thought about that. That's all. It's not a big deal. Just curious.
Okay. I have it in front of me. I will share commentary once I've had a moment to read it. I didn't know, but I was looking at here.
Thank you.
May I be heard? Oh.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to share. Hello, everyone. This is Red in Nevada. I had a couple of observations this week. The first one being there was this non-white person at the plantation that I work for, and they had invited people over their house, like after work, both non-white and white. And apparently there were the thing after, like, I guess it was over the weekend, and I was one of the people who was invited, but it was kind of like the person had already said what they were going to be cooking, and maybe if people wanted to bring stuff like that. And I'm like, since I'm really, strict on what I eat, I'm not going to bring over food for other people to eat. And plus also in my spare time, hang around suspected white supremacists. So the non-white person, she kind of got mad at the black people that were invited, because she said that only the white people came. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, they probably went over your house to, do like, kind of like a recon mission to kind of figure out, okay, well, what, how are you actually living and this, that, and the other. So I just thought that was interesting how, and even hearing from some like, other victims, non-white, non-black victims who, might have been invited or whatever. I was like, no, we don't really, hang out or bring our families around people who we don't really know. So I just thought that was interesting and a very smart thing to do, because you don't want to have people kind of know how you are outside of the plantation. The other thing was a white woman, theme of the day, had said they were talking about, and they brought it up themselves, they were talking about like entertainers, black entertainers, and how come they can afford so many different things if their credit is bad and they murder people. I'm like, how do you know that they murder people? And you're like, oh, well, some of them, they actually, different entertainers, singers and rappers, and, maybe like not the, basketball players or whatever, they don't talk about it, but, the rappers do. And, just kind of stand in the question lane and then, try to figure out, okay, this is supposed to be one of the white women who is supposed to be nice and is constantly talkative and, saying good morning every day. And so I just thought that was interesting how they can hide their racism and, saying all this behind a smile. And I guess I guess that was it. That's it for this week. Thank you for allowing me to share.
I will say, my code, I hope people do not take this as me contradicting myself. My code has been for some time, be serious in the workplace. Not a time for joking around. You should be, I think I said that last week repeatedly, be known for being a stickler for the rules, being serious. I'm not here to hee-haw and, laugh it up with you all. Black people or, whites on the job. That said, that set of questions or statements, I guess she was making, that the black entertainers or rappers or whatever it is snort crack and kill people and have bad credits and have bad credit and buy all these, crazy things with their money. That might have been an opportunity where I would have given my one-liner. I blame Bill Cosby and just go on about my work, but be serious in the workplace. I think the standard code to stick to is, number one, you don't have to say anything at all when whites are there. You don't have to go digging to try to think of a question or do it. In fact, that is a golden opportunity to give them a fuller, right out of the word guide and continue with your day. Even if you want to bust out your pen and pad and write down, niggers, waste money, bad credit, kill everybody. Yeah, and then go right. That's nothing required to be said at all. That works beautifully. Like I said, now I am feeling a little silly sometimes. Last few days of summer, you want to get your one-liner in, fine. Continue rolling. But that is, neither here nor there. The serious, consistent code. Nothing need be said at all. You can ask a question, but I thought also with the rendezvous situation, is this one where did you feel like there might be any repercussions? Because we've talked about that before as well. For you not attending this after hours soiree?
I don't think there are any repercussions now outside of the fact of, trying to minimize contact, to minimize conflict. I know that the individual is, definitely displaying some type of attitude towards me, but outside of that, no, and it's not someone who, at least for directly, would be able to affect the couple of nickels that I get. But thank you. I'll mute my line.
Right on. Great use of food too, or diet, food, whatever it is, for those situations that, I have really strict diet needs or food allergies, however you need to phrase it. I can't just, trust my health to any old thing that people put together in the kitchen. I have to be really, really disciplined about what I eat and how my food is prepared. So I can't participate in that. That should be one that you can just, boop, no questions asked. And you can use that repeatedly because that'll get you out every time there's any sort of potluck or we're all supposed to be bringing victuals to eat together. Oh man, I got gluten issues, wheat issues, peanut allergies. So you can just list them all. I got a bunch of them. I can't do any of that stuff. I'm on a diet trying to get a few pounds off. I'm doing the keto diet. Make up whatever you need to. Can't do it. Sorry. Be with you in spirit. That was interesting that it was only white people who showed up as well. It seems because I have, even when we did teacher training, they were doing something similar, a potluck, and they were going to a person's house, and myself and the only other black person in teacher training, we were talking about this, and she said, I don't think she's familiar with counter-racism or Mr. Fuller, but she said, I don't think black people do that, just trust eating from white people like that. I don't think black people get down like that. And I was like, that is great, outstanding. We can keep that as part of the black code. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Wowzers. Heard quite a few folks. We will get Thomas in New York first.
Thank you, Gus. Thanks to all the other callers. I think I did hear a female, though, Gus.
Really? Really? Was there a female?
Yes, I did.
It was such a cacophony of sound.
Yeah, I thought I heard three voices, another male and a female. But just wanted to say, great show so far. Getting to work, racism on the train. When I'm on the first stop, so I generally have no problem getting a seat on the train, and I usually get the seat I want, which is usually a corner seat. So, I have open space on one side of me and another seat next to me. So only one person can, squeeze next to me. The trains on the line that I live on, the 3 train line, they were made in Japan. So they were made for much narrower people than, the people that ride the trains in the United States. So, it's not, the seats are kind of perforated for one person, but, you kind of hang off the side, which is another reason why I like to get the corner seat, because I'm able to create more space for other people, if I'm on the end, because my shoulder and everything goes, over. Either way, on the train. And, as the train starts to get crowded, and as you know, this week school started in New York, I saw a white lady, getting on the train with 2 white children. And they were probably 7, 8, and I don't give up my seat to the white people. That's just, a code I have. A black woman or, a person classified as black, a woman or pregnant or, an elderly person without a problem. But if I see really any non people classified as black, I'm not getting up the seat for them because I don't see them do the same for adult people. So this black woman, she saw them and she was sitting across from me, and she stood up, and then she, this isn't the first time it's happened to me. She asked me to stand up so that the other child could sit. She was going to let one sit in her seat. And I said, I don't believe in teaching them bad habits this early, what black people are supposed to give up seats to them. So the white woman immediately she kind of, let me get away from him. So, no, that's a white lady. She told the black lady to sit down, and, she walked in, none of the white people got up for her. She stood there, and they held on to the pole, like I thought. Also on the train, this was the other morning, I'm on the train, and I couldn't get a corner seat because, like I said, school started. So when I got to the train, it was already very crowded. So I was in the middle, and next to me was an empty seat, and then next to that was a lady who was quite heavy set, a black woman, and she, we was just riding the train. When we get to a certain stop where the white people get on the train. Once they get out of Harlem, it's like a flood of white people. And they're often pissed because we got all the seats. So this white male, he decided he was going to try to squeeze in between herself and I, which it was impossible. And I decided I was gonna ignore him and just stay right where I was, and he wasn't gonna be able to get there anyway. But she said, "There's no way you're gonna fit in here, sir." She was very respectful, and he calls her a few names, and you're taking up too many space, and he kept looking like trying to find an angle to get in there. And then he did something really disgusting, which was just sit there with his mouth open and just let drool come out his mouth, and so I had to move my leg, because either way, when the train got off on Times Square, where most people were getting off to go to work, I get up, the lady has to get up as well. He wouldn't move, so neither one of us could stand because he's standing over us, and I guess he was so pissed that he couldn't get a seat that he was going to stand in. So, I broke my code for a second, and I kicked him in his kneecap. And he went, falling, and I, got up and walked off the train. Another incident that happened, the white French woman at work, becoming very, she's very touchy-feely. So I said to her, I don't, feel comfortable out, you're in my space. And I don't like being touched. And she said, "Oh, that's just a French thing." And she walks off. In this accent, that French, yes. I'm starting to get that vibe. And the perfume, it's, I can't stand French people. Of all white people, to me, they're the worst because they're just the weakest white people. And I can't stand some weak white people. So either way, she, comes over and, now she plays the kitchen as I'm cutting fruit, which I can't stand. And I would, generally leave, and, the person gets the hint that, he's not going to do any of his work until I leave. And, they don't want the big lady to come around and see that they're hindering me from doing my job. So either way, she got reprimanded for, because, as I'm cutting fruit and trying to get from one side to the next side to get another tray, I'm bumping into her, and she keeps spilling stuff. It's just an annoyance. So she was reprimanded by, what are you doing here? Type of, he's doing his job. You go back to your desk when the food is ready, you get an email. Now you got an Irish accent talking to a French accent. It's just too European. So either way, last thing I'm going to add, as I expected, I think I told you last week, I lifted the faucet up and the handle came off. Did I tell you that? Did that happen, Gus?
Oh yeah, they were trying to blame you for it. Is that it?
So here I go Friday. Doing my job, and here she comes in and gives me a tutorial on how to use a faucet. So, I was already pissed at her that day. I can't even remember what happened that had me in the mood that I was in, but I was already in the mood dealing with her. So, I told her, listen, I said, I come from this country. We always have faucets in my house. I know how to use a faucet. Mind you, I was hoping she took it as offended as she did, so she just walked away sucking her teeth. So, she's from Ireland. They ain't got no faucets. It's a third world country. So I beat my line. Thank you, Gus.
Woo, man. They cannot get black people training for anything. But all of a sudden, we have tutorials for proper faucet use. Wow. Context of white supremacy. Incidentally, New York is awful. I have been to New York many times before, but because of that and then the repeated stories, that is exactly why the C.O.W.S yoga retreat cannot be in New York City. I mean, Anyway, the whole commute to work is wretched and designed to be so for lots of black people. They had specific reports talking about that in different parts of the world, how they were displacing black people further and further from where they were, from their places of employment. So there was either really long commutes taking 3 buses or really long drives or being on the train, just all kinds of zaniness for employment. The white woman, I think any effective workplace counter-racist code has to have like a confident response for any sort of encroachment on your personal space. Like that is just mandatory. Black self-respect, whatever you say, whatever you do. We've had a lot of people who've given great suggestions over the years, but I always think that is phenomenal. Really be vocal and present, confident in protecting your personal space, white man or white woman. If they're touching or anything, any of the excuse, like, hey, I do not wish to be touched, whatever it is. I'm, just trying to get things done. We don't need any unnecessary pawing, molesting. That's one where words can be very effective, but practicing them at home or whatever you need to do. If there was a female voice that spoke up before that we missed, you should speak now. Maybe we were hearing things. Let's see. The other caller who had a hand, or the other caller who spoke, I think, simultaneously with Thomas in New York.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Greetings. This is Mhandisi. I was going to, now that I hear you mention about the transportation situation that, a lot of black people have difficult time with transportation to work. While I was in California, for this period of time that I was out there. I'm not there now, but while I was there, was the desert. So that's one thing to consider. But, when some people I know that were looking for work, they were trying to find work that they could go to any work. And a lot of the work that they were looking at, they started early in the day, but the buses don't run. It doesn't run to where you can actually make it to work on the bus. So actually, I have no clue how you would make it to work if you didn't have a car. And so, you can't walk either. That's not a place to walk because that's the desert. And carrying all that water, it ain't even going to work. So that's one thing. That it's all over the place where transportation is intentionally scheduled and planned to where black people are not able to even make it to work or to do much anything. And then the other thing, the reason I was calling, what is the C.O.W.S shirt information so I can get a C.O.W.S shirt, if you don't mind?
It's C.O.W.S, C.O.W.S shirt at gmail.com. Dr. Trav should respond to the email and let you know. I don't know how many, the quantity of shirts that he was doing and all that, but it should not be a problem. But C.O.W.S, C.O.W.S shirt at gmail.com.
Okay. And I wanted to say one last thing concerning the C.O.W.S shirt. So if a person were to wear that C.O.W.S shirt, let's say at work, or let's say a politician were to wear it, do you think that, let's say the politician, could a politician wear that, and do you see that being constructive, or do you see that being potential big problems?
It's hard for me to, the problem aspect, it's hard for me to pick out the problem aspect of it because I haven't encountered any problems wearing the shirt. And over the 6 years, I haven't heard from anyone else who's encountered a problem wearing the shirt. Now, the however would be, I haven't spoken to anyone who wore it on the job, I don't think, or anyone who wore it while campaigning for an office. That is substantially different. And I've generally said to folks to not wear it on the job. If anyone has worn that shirt on the job, that would be grand to hear how that how all of that went. But problems, I don't know. I can't. I'll think about it. I'll give it some thought. But off top, I don't know.
I don't know either, but they're violent, you know?
For
I don't mean to
sure.
interrupt
But
you, but they're violent.
They could do that anyway, right? I mean, you wouldn't necessarily
Right.
have to wear the shirt for that. And the first part of it was it benefit, or what was the first part?
Right. Do you think that it would be constructive? Like, that's ultimately what I'm wondering, yes.
There was a politician today. I'm a victim. Forgive. I wasn't going to talk about this because it's not. Maybe it is. Anyway, I wasn't going to. The point is, I was not going to talk about this today. There's a politician, non-white male, who just did a, I guess, commercial. He's running for office for his campaign, and he said, "I am your nigger." Tell people I'm your nigger, whatever, to get his vote. And he got all this publicity. It's been everywhere. They're talking about it, blah, blah, blah. So it could, people want to talk. Where did you get this wacky shirt from? What is this? What do you mean treat you like what? Or respect? Whichever version you get. It could be some good publicity. It could be, people want to do some interviews and talk and, get your face on television or do some interviews, what have you, to get your message out. So that could be constructive. I mean, media is good, right? You always want press coverage if you're doing a campaign, yes?
Absolutely.
That could be constructive. Maybe other folks are here. What do you all think? Would that be what problems? Because we might have missed any problems or constructive benefit to having this shirt on in a workplace setting, and/or if you're running for elected office, a publicly elected office, to wearing this shirt while you are out during your campaigning, shaking hands, kissing babies, handing out bumper stickers and all of that, and you've got your "please treat or respect me like I am a white person" shirt on. Do y'all think that would be helpful to the campaign? Harmful?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it may be helpful, but again, also pose some challenges. I do think it would be interesting about the whole publicity, because of course, when Black people are wearing shirts that kind of even hint at something to do with racism, it seems like it does at least get you a lot of likes or something like that. But then also, you may have to worry about the white people who may, as far as getting elected, because, you can't just only depend on victims, especially how much racism is done with the votings. So that's the only thing that I would maybe consider, is if you wear the shirt, white people, they say that they do like it, but they might not, you might not get their vote anyway, or, you might not get their vote or whatever, or the politician rather. I'll mute my line. Thank you.
That's a good point. Any other folks? Potential value or potential harm of wearing this shirt in a workplace setting and/or campaigning for office?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Greetings, Emmy.
Greetings, beautiful people. I personally don't think that there's any constructive value wearing the shirt to work or campaigning. I don't think that there's enough evidence to suggest that being that blatant about racism making statements, period. But even with your fashion, I would probably feel the same way about wearing other t-shirts that maybe said other things or had other symbols and stuff like that to work or while you're campaigning. Primarily because I feel like it puts the spotlight on you and already makes it to where your room for maneuvering in terms of being subversive is greatly diminished, because I don't think, especially if images are caught of you, really be able to escape this very loud statement. And then it opens yourself up, particularly to, if you're pursuing office, to a host of questions that you would have to be, I would think or postulate, you'd have to be very skilled at answering and making sure that those answers, if immortalized forever, via some other form of media, radio or written or whatever, would cause you no issues further down the line. And I'm not so sure, like, what answer, if you have these answers, you've thought about this all the way to that point, like, okay, so I wear the shirt, someone runs up with the camera, asks me a question, so what do you mean by this? Or what is racism? I mean, yes, perhaps I could totally see the value in the publicity aspect, but I could also see the grave danger and perhaps maybe not being as prepared. And so the image that popped into my mind about it was the spook who sat by the door. I personally feel that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that maneuvering in that way in the workplace or office allows you to get further, because no one can really detect how you think about some of these things, which I think is one of the strategies that works best for us if we consider ourselves counter-racist scientists or, soldiers out here. Not being able to pinpoint exactly where you stand until you're in that position to really, for instance, like maybe Dr. Francisca Welsing, although she too paid for it, she had her stuff, so to speak, and was able to speak from that space. But to get there, I'm not so sure that it would be as constructive. I know that's a little long-winded, but thank you for listening.
Logical. Much obliged, Emmy. Do you have a ready-made retort? You're out campaigning. You got your buttons. You got your bumper stickers. You're wearing your shirt. Cameraman, camerawoman comes up. Journalist. Say, what do you mean? Respect you. Treat you like a white person. You're out here trying to get votes. What do you mean? Boop. And they stick the mic in your face. Did you have a response already prepared?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Preparation, definitely important. Any other folks have a thought on this? Do you think it would be beneficial or harmful to wear the shirt, workplace environment, I guess, if you're campaigning for a publicly elected office?
Can I be heard?
Retired firefighter in Florida? Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Gus. I'll try to answer the question. From my observations about professional politics, and I put that kind of in the same frame as the term I've used as professional voting. A politician I would think would avoid creating more symbols or different things, maybe about their personal life, to have to explain if it's especially, I would say, under the subject of racism and white supremacy. That's for a white as well as a non-white professional politician. They have a tendency to avoid that, because it could be one of those situations where you are creating more problems. The problem is, of course, is to get elected, but by putting that shirt on, it may be a situation where you actually are making it a little bit more tougher than what you may want it to be, because you would have to explain it. And from there, you can basically complicate the percentage of people who would make a choice for you for that particular job. I would say there is some cases where there are exceptions. I think I saw somewhere on the internet, YouTube, where a black female who was elected to a position, and she constantly used counter-racist symbols in the process of her getting elected. But I suspect that the voter population, a lot of them were non-white black people. Matter of fact, when she was being sworn in, I think she had a glove on or something like that. It was something that was very unusual. That was very symbolically what people call pro-black. I put it that way, as far as that concerned. But it's from my understanding, the environment that was voting for her was a lot of non-white people, and even in that situation, that politician is still taking a chance. So I would say close to what Miss Emmy was talking about, that they probably wouldn't. And as far as job is concerned, I'm not in favor of any thing that has any type of description on it when you go into work. Of course, what I did, it wasn't nothing, like that at all. Except for when you was involved in some sort of recreation, whether you were lifting weights or playing basketball. It might be a different situation. Now, I've been in environments at the station where all of the people at the station were black. And so I may have on, or someone else may have had on a shirt that had some sort of symbol or some kind of phrase to it that was had something to do with counter-racism in that situation. But, and I will say what I'm talking about, I've actually broken the rule. In some cases, I would do it. I would do it. I've done it in that time that I was on that job just to get a reaction on purpose. Just to get a reaction, I would do it. But I was taking a risk, what I call a calculated risk into doing it. And that's my attempt to answer the question. Thank you.
Can I be heard?
Thomas in New York.
Yes, I would say absolutely, positively, I would not. I wouldn't wear this shirt to a workplace environment. My codification is why create any problems that's unnecessary at the workplace. I'm just trying to get in and get out and hopefully be unseen by anyone, Like, I'm not trying to just have a conversation T-shirt on, a team shirt on, or anything like that, anything that's going to spark any unnecessary conversations. And I believe that shirt in New York City would spark a huge conversation because white people are, well, you see the president, they're very open with how they feel in a codified way, if that's what you call it. Now, the running for politics, I think if I was running for politics and I was to wear this shirt, that white people, especially reporters, they would look in to see where this shirt came from. And they might pull up more information on things I might have said in the past on the show and things of that nature that would go against me winning the election. And white people are very good investigators. So I would advise not to do that.
Good point, Thomas in New York. They definitely would not miss. The logo for the cows is on the shirt. Other folks who dialed in with a hand, I guess we could take a couple more, take two more. If folks have a thought on wearing the cow shirt, political campaign, workplace workplace environment.
May I be heard?
Greetings, Ivy.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings to the firefighter, Thomas, New York, resident expert, super codified software developer, Emmy, everyone. Imhan DC, greetings to you, sir. I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, because I actually think that it's constructive. I think that if it's non-political if it's a non-political job, I would not recommend that at all. As far as the political thing, it depends on how much you need the job. I think that in terms of it harming your election chances, again, that depends on how badly you need the job, because in my view, in a system of white supremacy, white people are not going to let you help black people, which I would think would probably be your goal. However, I think it will be very constructive with the conversation that it could garner. You could help to lessen the confusion of other victims. There are other people who actually, get paid a lot of money to talk about racism. You have Tariq Nasheed, you have, some other people. So it could be lucrative. I guess it kind of depends. I'm not sure how lucrative it is if you're, super honest, and it may depend on your confusion level. And I just wanted to say in closing, thank you so much for always saying white people kill black people. I think most of us do not understand that, and I am keeping that in my mind as often as possible, and it's resonating more and more every day. I'm just so grateful for you constantly stressing that, and I'll mute my line. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gus.
Right on, Ivy. Last comment on the shirt situation before we move on to other items.
Have you heard?
Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. Caller from California. To answer the question, sure. I don't know if that's the right question, but for that reason, my answer is I don't know. But I do have a 2 cow shirt situations of my own, if you don't mind or no.
Man, this seems like a super detour, but since it was brought up in the context, let's hear the cow shirt stories.
Thank you. My first situation was I wore it to a theme park out here. Dozens, if not hundreds of people, mostly white, racist suspects. And the first interaction that I got was from a black female, and she gave me the thumbs up and was very happy to see me wearing a shirt. The second interaction I had was with a quote-unquote Hispanic person, and he approached me and just said out that I apologize on behalf of all white people. And then at that moment I was thinking I should have asked him to do something, but nothing came to mind. And the second time I wore the cow shirt was during my sibling was having a child. I wore it to the hospital, and mostly the white nurses tried not to look, but there was one non-white, non-black person who looked at the shirt and was happy and asked where I get it from. And I told him about the program. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Congratulations on being a new uncle. That's great. That is hilarious. I apologize on behalf of whites. Hilarious. I guess other folks, if you have your shirt story, you can email or share compensatory call in. That'd be a good time to share if you have other shirt stories as people wear them out in public and see what happens. This is all supposed to be an experiment anyway. Off topic. Back to workplace racism. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. To get back to make sure I'm on topic with workplace racism, I will get through some of the emails that folks have mailed in to make sure that I get through all of those before we get to the conclusion of the broadcast. Let's see. Person who emailed in. Oh, so they have a question, so we'll be getting feedback on this one, hopefully. I have a. Let's see. All right. I have a question for workplace racism. I am currently looking to leave an employer, but an issue I keep running into is a lack of professional references. I've been using friends of the family, but that will only work for so long. I am not as experienced as some of the other callers and am currently in school for information technology, if that helps. What would be the best way a victim of racism, white supremacy could navigate around this obstacle? Great question. If you are in school, you should have an instructor or two that you can hopefully form some sort of connection to where they can be a reference. I would also look to see if you can get in some other situations, whether it's volunteering, something in your field where you're doing some work where someone could also write you a reference that speaks to your character, your competence, your professionalism. I think that can be helpful as well. Whites, they have all kind. I mean, you talk about masters of deception. My God, they wow, that's like multiple programs in terms of the deception and how they are able to do this. But I think those would be two good ones. Do other folks have suggestions? It sounds like for someone, especially who is younger, in terms of ways that they can help get references.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
The suggestion that I have that I've used in the past, I don't know if like with this person, at least with past jobs, if they have someone like even like a victim. I've used other victims on plantations that I've kind of formed some type of bond with. I've used that. And then also even some of like the victims, because like they'll only promote, non-white people so high. And so far up the chain, and even developing, if they've developed any kind of bond with a victim who might be like an assistant supervisor or something like that, that might even be, maybe an option. And I'll meet my line. Thank you for allowing me to share.
For sure. It's a great one if you have former co-workers that you've remained in contact with who can, same thing, speak to your competence, professionalism. Other folks have suggestions for references?
Can I be heard?
Yes, Emmy.
My first initial gut reaction was volunteering because I actually wanted to talk about that later. So I wanted to emphasize that because I think many times people forget about volunteering. We get so busy and stuff like that. But volunteering is a fantastic way to get a lot of things accomplished, including developing professional references. And it's great if you can get it in your field, but if you can't, even just doing anything that's a service will help. And a lot of times when you're volunteering, those people who are running the volunteer programs or whatever are generous, or they want to help you out because you're helping them as well. And then the other one that if you have any mentors or anyone that functions like a mentor, so maybe it's not like through a mentor program, but maybe there's like this older person that you've developed some type of rapport with or relationship with, maybe just kind of like around the way. I have one, and I use her. And I've been using her for a very, very long time. And I put down that she is a mentor, and that's better than a friend. Maybe not as good as someone who, like an employee or a supervisor, but it still can go ways if they can speak to your character. So even if they're like a coach or something like that, like I'm not so sure what all you're into. I don't know if you go to church and whatnot, but even if it's like someone in that type of environment that's enough older than you that they're not a friend. Thanks.
Can I be heard?
Much obliged, Emmy. Radiant as usual. Retired firefighter. Proceed.
Yes. You can as far as your educational background. You can actually start from elementary school all up to high school. If that person attends college, the same thing as far as getting references. I heard the word coach. Coaches have been used quite a bit. If you are a member of a quote-unquote church, ministers have been utilized. When I mean school, I'm also talking about the administrators, the principal at all three levels. Even if you went to college, the chief administrator of that college, as far as they're concerned, especially if they have access to your transcript, and let's say it's successful, they don't really have to know you personally, and as far as they're concerned. And of course, you paid to go to that college also. There's many different means to obtain references. It depends on what profession and or job that you are pursuing, and you kind of want to make it identifiable as far as they're concerned. Kind of like the people that you pick may have some obvious connection with the profession that you are attempting to be employed by. But those are some of my suggestions that I've actually done myself, as well as seen others do. Thank you.
Great reason to talk about workplace racism. Excuse me. Much obliged, retired firefighter. Just cultivating references, that can be very helpful as well. I did know some black people, they would do that. They would stay in touch, and sometimes it would just be they went to school together and then they graduated. So now, we're professional, even though we're college chums, technically, as they would say, but now we're both professionals. So this can be someone who can vouch, and all the way up, because they can talk about my educational background and, how well I did and how I apply that in different work situations and being reliable and dependent. Everything I said, competence, professionalism, but that can be one right there. And just talking about the workplace, and someone helps, I guess, if the person can write well, so they can be impressive when they're saying all of the superlative things about you. Other folks have suggestions for reference development?
Really quick, this is probably not the most, constructive, long-lasting solution. But if you're trying to get a job right away and say all of the suggestions aren't working for you, I know you said you've been using family thus far. Maybe you've already done this, maybe you haven't. But if there is a professional family member, and by professional I mean in the way that they can speak and stuff like that, that has a different last name. Again, this is not the most, legit way to do it, but if you're in a bind and you got to do what you got to do, use that family member that doesn't have the same last name, and then always talk with this person and make sure that the stories line up. That whatever you're putting down on paper is what this person is going to corroborate and confirm with whoever is going to call and ask about you. So you just want to be very thorough to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's if you're using that person. You might already be doing it, but just in case you're not. Thanks.
Grand. Any other reference suggestions?
Can I be heard?
Software developer.
Yes, sir. I don't know if this was mentioned, and I didn't hear the whole email because I was taken away for a minute, so apologies for that. I did use, when I was in school, I did use some of my TAs who were some of them were suspected racist, but that I had built enough of a professional rapport with where they could speak about me professionally. So if you have any TAs, I wouldn't go for the professors. But if there are some TAs, because you have more access to them and you deal with them more often, and if they know your work very well, and if you're, obviously excelling at your work, you could use them in a pinch. I don't know if that was one of the issues that the caller, the writer, was having. But that is a suggestion. Thank you. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged. Our solo Wisconsin representative on the line now. Any other suggestions for references? Grand. Moving forward. Other folks that we have not heard from at all. There are people who dialed in with a hand up that we've not heard from. Proceed.
May I be heard?
Rob, formerly of Wisconsin.
This is actually Raymond. I'm from Kentucky. I'm a
Oh no!
first-time
My
caller.
apologies. My apologies. I thought it was Rob relocated. My apologies, Raymond, Kentucky. My apologies.
Oh, no.
Thank you so much for dialing in first time, sir.
Yes. Man, I just want to tell you, honestly, I truly, truly appreciate you, man. This is, I was on YouTube one day just scrolling. I almost thought it was too good to be true. I was like, yes, it's set up. Ain't nobody talking about this. And I've been listening. I went back about 3 months. I've just been listening. And I was like, man, this and other conscious broadcasters have really been implemental in basically just dealing with white supremacy on the workplace, man. And I mean, it's really just a pleasure to talk to you and really be on the broadcast and be around the family, people that understand. I'm also a victim, you know what I'm saying, as everybody already knows. And I'm a former Division I athlete. I ran track. And ever since I graduated college, basically my demise has been, in the professional setting, has been white supremacy. The story I want to tell you, I wrote you on Twitter and was like, hey, I have a story to tell. And this may be a bit lengthy, but I promise you, and to all the people that have chimed in thus far, I do want to hear everybody's input, because this is a very interesting case. I don't want to, for the purpose of my story, I don't want to use any names. I personally don't care, but it's just the fact that what it all surrounds, like ultimately encompassing how white supremacy has affected me in the workplace, but I don't want to use any names. So I'm just going to give the precursor and then the actual story. Well, my second job, coming from college, I worked at the museum for the most famous black boxer. Matter of fact, the GOAT of all boxers. I'll say that. So I'll say it without saying. That's where I worked. I worked in the security department. And when I first started working there, I quickly noticed that all of it was basically all of the whites were, how can I put it, in the focal point, right? All the whites were in the front. All of the blacks were in menial roles in the bottom. And when I first started, I was like, well, why isn't there any black people in any form of leadership? This is literally all passive-aggressive white women, to which I honestly believe is my demise. I'm terrified of white women spotters. But the entire time I was there, I noticed that all of the blacks were on the bottom. They were the security or janitors, all of which the entire workforce was older. I mean, older is in retirement age. And there were several incidents, and I'm not necessarily outspoken. However, if I do take a problem with something or I feel like an injustice is being done, I have something to say about it. So I pick and choose my spots very well. And my supervisor, he was a black man, but he was, I mean, I don't like the name call, but I'll say he was more confused, leaning towards the coon side. So, small tidbit on him. Just to kind of,
hang on. I have not had to use the mute button in so long. My goodness. The rule for the cows, there's no name calling on the cows. That word is an immediate mute. I'm rusty. I was normally ready with the mute button. I was feeling a bit callous to mute a first time caller, but this is no name calling. I've concluded that is a major part of why we haven't solved this problem, and calling other black people names, even if they're confused, that does not solve any problems. You can call this person a coon a million times, and that's not going to solve any of your problems. So please, no name calling. Raymond in Kentucky. I do owe you one because I misspoke with your name. So proceed without the name calling, sir.
Absolutely. Those are my apologies. So my supervisor was confused, I'll say. At any given time, he would basically blame all the ills of society on black folks. Just at any given time, and he would always do it. He would make sure to do it in front of white people, which it would rub me the wrong way, so much to the point I'd always have to leave the room. He would do it around police officers, judges, attorneys, anybody that would listen at any given time. The rest of the security force was basically older black women, to which they told me on multiple occasions, young man, if you want to make it at this job, you're going to have to learn how to, the word that they used was Uncle Tom. That was exactly what the word that they used. To which I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't think that that's okay. My supervisor's boss, I'll call her the head honcho, the passive aggressive white woman. She basically was just basically an all, like just as I put it, the passive aggressive white woman. She was very, very scary and very entrenched with racism. There was a particular time where she asked me if I could we walk the women to their cars after late night events. She asked me if I could walk her to her car, to which I said no problem, but I thought it was a little bit odd that it was 4:30 in the daytime in the heat of the summer. So I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. I'll walk her to her car. We don't talk about anything except for the weather. She tells me have a good weekend. I say, well, you too. I walk back into my job. The following day, I had the day off. One of my fraternity brothers, he calls me and he says, hey, Raymond, they're really talking about you. You have to clean up your act. I said, what's going on? My supervisor's boss basically had told the entire staff that she didn't feel safe with me walking with her to her car, and she felt that I didn't want to walk her out there, and that she was so terrified once I left that she had to run to her car. To which I replied, well, I don't think that was the case at all. Like I said, I'm not going to create new problems for myself, but we have a camera system. Let's use that. So that's just a tidbit on her. The situation that happened started the first weekend of the following college semester, so that end of August. We had for some odd reason, they thought it was a good idea to have a fraternity party, a white fraternity party at the museum, to which I immediately took the light bulbs went off, the question marks went off. So me and the supervisor's boss, the white woman, she tells me, hey, Raymond, we're going to have a party for these fraternity kids. They're going to come in. They don't have any alcohol. They don't have any food or drinks. Make sure they do not bring alcohol into the museum. It is a liability. We could basically be held accountable for anything that happens to them while they're on their premises. I replied back, yes, ma'am, I agree with that. I don't think that that's okay. She says, I think it'll be a smooth night. Don't you think so? I said, well, I have to disagree with you. And she was like, well, why? I tell her, well, you have to understand that this is the first weekend of college. It's the first weekend that students are free from their parents. It's the first time that they have free reign. It's going to be as bad as it can possibly be on our dime. She says, I don't think so, and scoffed and walked away. There was one white security officer. He was very callous and he was trenched in white supremacy. He was one of the most meanest men I've ever met. He asked if he can swap me out at the desk. I immediately said, absolutely, because if things go bad, they'll be blamed on you and not myself. I go, and I'm basically in the camera room. What I see unfold that night, I saw these college students, they're 17, 18, 19, I saw these college students basically disrespect the center, disrespect themselves. They were urinating off the side of the building onto the freeway. Now, mind you, this is a 10-story building, like standing on top of the 10-story building, urinating onto the highway. They snuck in maybe 21 handles of alcohol. And on top of that, they were also doing drugs, and I mean hard drugs, in the bathroom, to which I caught them. And basically, when I caught them, I told my frat brother, today is the epitome of white supremacy. This is the epitome of white privilege in this country, because these are unfortunately going to be our future leaders in this nation. And he was upset as well, because when we would go accost the individuals, they would act as if they weren't doing anything wrong. Like, I would walk up to a kid, say, hey man, there's no alcohol in here. Give me that. This is illegal. Let's go downstairs. They would just extend their hand and introduce themselves as if this is just what they were supposed to be doing. There was a point in time in the night where they started hazing each other. They lined up all of the white men, I guess the pledgees, and basically were beating them on camera, visibly. They were throwing up all over the murals, and these were hundreds of thousands of dollar items from this famous boxer, throwing up and just completely disrespecting the place. I took great offense to it. At the end of the night, no damage, no trouble was gotten into. Security department was basically looked me in the face and said, don't worry about it. We have it. Nothing was ultimately done. The following weekend, I come to work. It's a normal day. I check the sheet saying which event we had that day. And I saw Kentucky Free Thinkers Convention. I didn't really think anything of it at first. Ultimately, I really thought, well, maybe it's just a forum for free speech, because we do host good events. Now, they're always whitewashed and sanitized to make it seem like society is the victim. I mean, society is the perpetrator and not blaming a specific group of people. So when I go upstairs, one of the custodians comes up to me and she tells me that, hey, do you know what this convention is about? I reply back, no, ma'am. She says, well, Raymond, this is the National Atheist Convention. My eyes perked up at this point in time, because I worked in a facility for the greatest boxer of all time. And he lived by 6 principles, and one of those principles was spirituality. It just so happened that I was sitting behind the sign that said, to protect and represent the ideals of this said individual at all times. My problem wasn't necessarily with the atheists. It was with the administration that took the money. Ultimately, my supervisor, the passive-aggressive white woman. Basically, my issue is that I personally live by the mantra that I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity and my morals for money, and I felt that that's what the center was doing at that point in time. So my problem wasn't with the atheists, because they were just coming to the address that they paid for. My problem with the person that accepted the money and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to have this here. The bigger problem, I had another problem with that situation, because the news and the media came to the center all the time. And as security, it was my job to sign them in, give them the media passes, let them film about as they were allowed to do. And I just didn't want to be a part of it. Not only did I feel uncomfortable with it, but the first impressions are kind of everything in this situation, because the first person that walked in, he basically wore, anybody's a wrestling fan, the Undertaker. He came in the Undertaker jacket, Undertaker hat, and he had a think it was maybe a 7-foot-long Grim Reaper blade on his back. It was real, it was rusty, and I'd never seen anything like it. So to know that this event is going on, and the first person that you see come in wearing that, I was a little bit more than taken aback, if I'd say that. And
about 30 seconds. That way people can kind of respond. You said you wanted people to kind of give feedback.
Yes. So ultimately, this event goes on. This event ends up going on, and I end up getting into it with the suspected white supremacist male about me going up and patrolling that event. He was basically telling me to just shut up and do my job, to which I was responding that, hey, this isn't what we're about. This isn't what we stand for at the center. I end up getting accosted by my supervisor, the black man that was confused. And he basically used the analogy, well, Ali stood for something too. And I ultimately responded back, I didn't do this because this is my opportunity to say, hey, I'm this is my chance to be like Ali. I was doing this because this was morally right, and I wanted to be on the side of right when everything was said and done. And I basically got written up for it after he basically praised me for it, and got written up for the whole thing. But ultimately, I do want to hear people's feedback just on the situation, because it's a deeper, much deeper story than that. Thank you for listening.
Much obliged, Raymond in Kentucky. It does not surprise me that sort of thing would be happening. I mean, we're in a system of white supremacy, and they mistreat non-white people worldwide in life, death. So it does not surprise me that they would be operating this establishment or hosting events that contradict the beliefs, practices of the person that this institute is supposed to be in reverence or in homage to. All of that said, with the write-up, it sounds like you've come to some conclusions about the work environment and the people that you work with. So it's not, or at least to me, it's not surprising that they chose to write you up for you voicing, I guess, your difference of opinion about this. With the write-up, it sounds like you still have your job. You weren't terminated, at least. Is this like a place where you want to continue to work, long term, or is this just something you're doing for a short period of time?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is ultimately a place that I was terminated from.
Okay.
That was literally the half of it. Honestly, I do not want to take a whole lot of your time. It's just, this is one of those situations that, outside of my immediate family, the reason for my termination is basically kind of.
Well, I didn't want to get the whole story. I didn't want to get the whole story because I did want to give people a chance to comment and then get other people. But yeah, you said so you're not working there anymore. Got that.
No,
I guess
I was ultimately terminated.
Got it.
It was
okay.
Yeah,
it was
other
folks
really
who.
Bad already.
That's why we have workplace racism. Lots of folks have these types of situations. Absolutely. Did folks have, I guess, any comments on how he handled the situation? Ultimately, I guess this was a part of ultimately him being terminated. I guess it's what they call Monday morning quarterbacking now, since he's not there anymore. But did any folks have thoughts on what they heard, his situation doing security there? No surprise with the white shenanigans, incidentally. Didn't want that to be lost. Have heard that about 8 billion times. My mind flashes back to Penn State and the white hooliganism. I'm talking about when the whites rioted when the coach was fired. All manner of any reason for white hooliganism, urinating off the building. We've talked about that for 10 years here on the Cows. But any thoughts on the termination and how he dealt with that situation?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be real quick. So, definitely appreciate Raymond's, sense of integrity, but especially with these museums. I know I spoke a while back about going to a museum. You have to understand that even though these museums are supposed to be, quote unquote, about the victims, they're not. And also there's more likely white money behind the museum. That's why you would be able to see all these different things, the atheist things that are blatantly against what this victim believes. So, I mean, it's nice and all that, you have that sense of integrity, but, at a plantation, even applying this maybe to your current plantation, if you have a current plantation to, yes, still have some personal integrity, but when it comes to your job duties, just as long as you're doing within, I could be wrong, of course, but just as long as you're doing something that is not only abiding by, the U.S. law, but also by the company's policies, just keep it there and not really put too much of your personal feelings into it if it's not something that is directly affecting a victim, and that's something that you can somewhat affect, somewhat do something about. And that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Much obliged, Red in Las Vegas. Talk about integrity. She is in the land of integrity. Good old Las Vegas. Other folks have thoughts on commentary from Raymond in Kentucky?
May I respond?
Just give us 1 second, Raymond. Did any other folks have? Yes, sir. Any other folks want to respond to what they heard from Raymond?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I have to concur with Red on this. There's only so much you can do in the global system, racism, white supremacy. White people are going to be white, and they are going to be allowed to do things that non-white people are not allowed to do, and they're going to be allowed to desecrate things that are supposedly memorializing non-white people, no matter how important those non-white people are. So I would have to concur with Red. Again, as long as to echo what you said, as long as you are not directly in conflict with a non-white person, harming a non-white person, or engaging in anything that would harm a non-white person, or can stop the harm to a non-white person, I would just stay out of the way in situations like that. I know it's very difficult, yet, obviously you have a great deal of respect for this person. I think I'm assuming I know who you're talking about. You have a great deal of respect, as many of us do, for this person. But unfortunately, that's just the way this system is. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged. Codified software developer. Absolutely. Absolutely. Whites are going to practice white supremacy. No surprises there. We'll get one more comment on Raymond's situation for the bottom of the hour. Last comment on Raymond's situation. Any of the folks who dialed in? Yes, ma'am.
I agree with the resident expert and super codified software developer in Wisconsin. I also wanted to say that no black person is a coon or a nigger or any of these psychological and verbal abuses that white people have come up with. Confused victims believe that coon means sellout or whatever. No, it doesn't. It means nigger. And we have just been, as a result of that word being used against us so much, we have just tried to apply different meanings to it and all of that, and it just still amounts to the same thing, which is just name calling. And when you call somebody a coon or a nigger or any of those words, you're calling not only that person, but you're calling yourself that, and you're calling other people that. And I don't want to be called a coon. I just wanted to, and it's also very logical that your former supervisor would, I guess, blame black people or something like that in front of white people and say things that he thinks that, white people will like, because all black people, even though we're not coons or niggers, we are victims of white supremacy, and we've been terrorized, in the area of economics, where we have been denied jobs. He knows that he is one step from being homeless, just on the basis of skin color. So jobs are very, very difficult to come by. And so it makes very logical sense that he would do whatever he had to do to maintain his job, to go up in his job, to keep his job, even if it means mistreating you. I could see that he could think that that's a very small price to pay if he's able to survive. So that's very logical on his part, even though it may be offensive or hurt, other people. But his desire to survive is very, very logical, and he shouldn't be called names for that. If anyone deserves the name calling, it's the people who put him in that position where he feels the need to do that in order to survive. And I'll mute my line. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gus.
Much obliged. Much obliged. The Grandcestor, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, her 10 stops. One of them was no name calling. No name calling. Context of White Supremacy. Person who wrote in, I think I might be able to nab everybody who wrote. Non-white listener, she said, I'm not sure if I responded the right way, but it's just my personality. I was in the building cafeteria, which opens to all businesses in the building. A group of white males were talking about the Nike Colin Kaepernick situation. Folks know he's the, I can't believe I have to explain. Folks know he's the non-white male former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And he was doing the kneeling for the anthem thing, right? And he has his current arbitration suit alleging collusion from whites in the NFL to keep him from getting a job, keep him from having a job, being white-balled. And Nike this week, they made him the spokesman. Nike is the official apparel maker for the NFL. They make all the uniforms and paraphernalia and what have you officially. And they picked Mr. Kaepernick this week as the spokesman. So that has created quite a conundrum since, all of this is going on. So that's the backdrop. Anyway. With all of that, the white males in line behind her at the cafeteria, that's what they were talking about. They were very negative, racist. They purposely asked me how I felt about the situation. I responded by asking them why they can't get over O.J. Simpson. They just responded, and said never mind and walked away. They weren't there to get lunch. They were there to start something with a black person. End of their transmission. I guess lunch, I don't know how many we've had on lunch. I guess lunch generally is people, whites, perhaps stealing or molesting your food in the office or asking you out to lunch, that sort of thing, but just people going to get lunch, and then that ended up being an incident of racism, trying to get your meal in between your work hours on the job. But this one, you might have more latitude because it sounds like these might not necessarily be whites that you work with, in which case you can say whatever you want to. We would normally, the thinking would be tailored to these are whites that you're working with, so, more restrictions and maybe asking questions. And she did stay in the question lane. She did, why can't you get over O.J. Simpson? Question. Works even for the workplace, but in this situation, yeah, you'd have a lot more latitude for what you would want to say, do. I mean, you're still a victim of white supremacy, but these might not even be folks that you work with. So, and as always, you're not obligated to respond. I cannot say that enough. Frequently, that is the best option. If anybody that is looking for an option in terms of counter racism, where you're not causing new problems, and you're not taking a situation which is already dangerous, which is the default system of white supremacy, and making that worse, frequently not saying anything, that will work. Generally, that is satisfactory. If you don't say anything there, mute nigger. Anyway, that no good Kaepernick, I'm glad he's not there. And I can't believe, they go about whatever the rest of their conversation. If they came purposely to start conflict with a nigger, they'll just go find another victim, presumably. Any comments on this vignette briefly before we move on? stay alert even while getting lunch. Stay alert. Race soldiers are always looking to abuse non-white people. We are in the last hour, so if we have folks who've not been heard at all, you should definitely speak up. Don't lollygag and wait till the final minute. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Folks we've not heard from, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I've commented on other people's situations. I do want to comment on the previous one that you just read and then just say a couple of things I've been thinking about. I agree. I'm all for not saying anything. That's like one of my most precious codified responses of all time is absolute silence. But I did want to point out that the whites who responded with a and walking away, that's codified behavior too. And it was very, very powerful. It's just like, and you just let it go. And I just wanted to highlight, because it's part of my previous things I was going to say in my list, but that we're always being watched, and it's very important to remember that. And as far as I'm concerned, whether I see these particular white people getting with other white people that I may see does not mean that these white people don't know the white people that I deal with on a regular basis. To say that more simply, as far as I'm concerned, all white people get together and collude, whether I know about it or not. And just to be really clear about the definition of collude, it means to come to a secret understanding, most oftentimes with a harmful or negative intent. As far as I'm concerned, that's just what they do. Now, I wanted to, it's been a while since I've really spoken and participated in the workplace racism, so I'm going to be as concise and laconic as possible. I invested in one of the more specialized recording devices. I have one that looks like a USB, although that was not really how I wanted it to be. It was the more cost-effective, but it is like a pro kind of situation. I tried it out. It was something that one of the other C.O.W.S listeners had suggested that I try. And it was a little bit more pricey, so it took me a little bit longer to get, but I got it, and I love it, and I like it, and it's working. I was working in a pharmacy. The pharmacy was bought out. It was shut down. The day they told me they were closing the pharmacy, I had my iPad. I created an Indeed account. I made that resume that while I was at work. It was slow. While I was at work, applied to, decided that at this point I was no longer going to do pharmacy because I don't really like pharmacy anyway. But I am healthcare oriented, so that I would shoot for something that would actually work for me. That's what I did. I put in applications, and my strategy was create the account because, like, don't procrastinate. Do what you can do right now. Create the account, copy. I keep my resume updated all the time, but I don't allow that to get backed up. So it's current. I keep a copy on my phone. So PDF version or whatever it is, I have a PDF version, so I can easily copy paste. And that's what I did with Indeed. Instead of uploading my resume, I just made one with them. Come to find out, it's actually a very legitimate looking resume. I actually thought it was formatted very nicely and presented very well. I know you can get really fancy with the resumes. My particular stance, what I've seen to be constructive into work, is simple is better. A lot of times, all the extra stuff kind of gets in the way, so you want to get to the point of whatever it is that you're trying to, sell yourself on or whatever. And Indeed did a great job. It was like boom, 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 bam, it's done. You can even print a version and save a copy. So if you do not have a resume, try Indeed.com, put your information in, and that'll give you at least a good working skeleton that you can work with. And if you do have a resume, but you're looking for jobs, I suggest uploading your information into Indeed, searching for whatever it is that you're looking for. And then the next part of the strategy was to find all of the jobs that I was willing to do and save them, which I could do. And then after I took a took a day break and then returned to the resume to comb through it to make sure that it was the way that I wanted it to be, then I just applied to a bunch of the easiest ones, the ones that like apply via Indeed. You can do that. I applied on a Sunday. I was called on a Monday. I got the job on Wednesday. What I wanted to do, the reason I'm saying that is because there are a lot of positions that if you do not know the particular vernacular to describe the title of the position, it would be hard to find. For instance, if you're, say, entry level, I don't know what everybody out there is doing, but even if you know other people who maybe they don't know what direction they're going in life, one great way to kind of get some exposure healthcare-wise, pharmacy tech, which I've always talked about, you apply to a pharmacy like, like a Rite Aid, like a Walgreens, a Target, or whatever it is that you have in your area. Most of those have programs where they'll take in the tech and you get 6 months. You train through their program. You sit for the national test. You don't have to go to a community college to do it. You keep your certification. You can get a job. Now, if you're trying to get into a hospital-type situation, which is what I wanted to do because I need clinical hours, the key words to look for are patient safety technician. If you type that into Indeed, because there are companies that will contract you out and you can go into people's homes or you can go into hospitals and work directly with patients. I like crisis intervention, so this is something that I like. If you want more information, I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. But it worked for me, and it's a highly rotating position because it is demanding, it is stressful. But if you're into that kind of thing, like myself, then this is a place for you to go. The pay it's okay. You know what I mean? It'll definitely help. This is for entry-level folks. Y'all who are totally in your professional thing, this may not be for you. But for entry-level folks, if you're looking for something, you need some money, patient safety technician, and then there are other keywords, buzzwords that you can type in. I have the option, I'm pretty much always on call, and I can choose. There are times that I'm specifically committed, which worked very well for me in my school schedule. I could go into people's homes, or I could go into hospitals. I'm not going into anybody's home. I live out here in Virginia, so they don't give me a picture of this person, and I'm not going into any suspected racist white people's homes. As a healthcare professional, I've stated this before, I get paid. Getting paid to do my job is getting paid to do my job. That's not an emotional investment. It's an exchange. In a hospital, I feel far more safe and capable of doing whatever it is that I'm there to do, which is to make sure that they don't injure themselves and blah, 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 blah. But before I began, I made sure I had the recorder. One, I'm collecting data. So how many times I'm going to get called out of my name, how many times I'm going to get called, just all of these things, and for protection. Because if, there's only so much I can do. So if someone, I'm doing my job, but they want to say, oh, such and such hit me or did whatever. No. I'm recording from the moment when I leave my car, I'm recording to when I get back in my car. And I do maintain, patient privacy or whatever. If nothing occurred. But it was interesting because come to find out, even though they shut the pharmacy down, they still transferred me to another pharmacy. So technically I have 2 jobs and I still work for the pharmacy, even though I don't really care about the pharmacy. So the first day I worked, they locked me in the store. And when I went to use the restroom, and they shut everything down before making sure that I had left the store. First time it ever happened. Sirens come on and police around the building, but I'm recording. And so I felt, I had already determined what I was going to do. Everything worked out fine. I didn't get thrown to the ground or anything, but I was recording. Then when I went to the hospital, I got called out of my name a bunch of times. The girl, she's not a girl because she's 90. Everything was fine, but the next thing you know, I'm all kinds of V's and all this other kind of stuff. She did not call me a nigger yet, or this particular time, but I'm sure that that's coming. But then even said that I hit her or whatever. No one carried it because she is dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, but I was ready. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. Be ready. I don't want to take up too much time, but I did want to highlight the benefit of having a uniform. I wear scrubs in both of my jobs, but I also have a school uniform. Like, there is a very regimented way that I dress, and that's helpful financially, helpful in terms of time, and helpful in controlling the image that I portray, which I calculate. That is a very calculated image that I portray. Silent. I don't have anything to say. I'm always asking questions. I'm about my work. I'm not about nonsense, and I'm not really friendly. But I am good at what I do, and I make sure that that is, in all of my work environments. And, yeah, I think that will... Oh, and then I think I shared with you all some time ago that I struggle with time. I commute everywhere, and I'm generally late, even though I try very hard to be on time. But that was something that I had committed to working on because Mr. Fuller stresses it. So I respect him, and I said, okay, well, let me get it together. And I'm getting it together, and it does work. I'm up at 4 o'clock, which is why I'm trying to hurry up and say all this so I can get off the call. But I'm up at 4 because I still go to the gym, but then it makes sure what that does is it guarantees that I'm wherever I need to be, anywhere from 30 minutes to even an hour before I'm even supposed to be there. I do have some early mornings where it's like I'm getting there kind of like with 20 minutes, but it's working and it's helpful, and it does kind of renegotiate it maintains the image that I'm portraying, who I say I am, and it also kind of renegotiates the space to where you're not looking at me as the late black girl, which, not to say that that means much, but in some ways that it does. Like, it does. They've placed that kind of importance on that thing. So with that, and just there's some videos on YouTube. I don't know how I wanted to be early and on time. And there's enough evidence to suggest that even if you don't have to be up that early, if you wake up very early, it allows you to maximize your most effective brain power time. I'm not a morning person. I'm not friendly during the day, and I'm really not friendly in the morning. But by waking up early, you can get more done. So if there are goals that you want to reach that maybe you're not reaching, maybe you're late to work, maybe you want to go to the gym, meditate, whatever, maybe waking up at like 5:30 could help you do that. So far, it's working for me. Maybe it'll work for you. I thank you all for listening.
Radiant Emmy, instead of a truant Negra, you are just a Negra. I am all about the uniform. Love it. Uniform. And when I say uniform, I don't mean like, whatever the school says, oh, you got to wear this, or wherever you happen to be, you got to wear this. But in terms of you said, this is my uniform. These are the clothes that I wear for work, where I'm not trying to look as cute as possible. I'm not trying to show off my abs or anything else. This is what I wear for an environment of terrorism so that I can survive. I'm all about the uniform. Before I moved, I was just going to ask really quickly, you said you record from the time you arrive in the morning and exit your vehicle to the time the day concludes and you hop back in the vehicle. How do you record, or how do you organize all of those recordings? You muted your line?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I haven't... Okay, I record every lecture. And I record every lecture to take notes, but also professors say things, some of these things I've shared with you all. So all of the school stuff is recorded via lecture. If I'm not in lecture, I'm not talking, and I'm not allowing anyone to talk to me. Time is precious, and I like to be alone, and I like it to be quiet. So, but when it comes to work, I work every other weekend. That's when I'm supposed to be there. So it's just by the date. And so in order to maintain privacy, because that's something that is very important to me, if nothing has occurred, nothing has occurred. So there's no need for me to keep that one. So far, it's just by date. I haven't really, I know I do keep them separate. So there's pharmacy and there's hospital. But I know because of the way that the new hospital job is, it tracks who I provide a service for and what time I provide that service. So when I upload the recording, I don't have to include their name or anything like that. I just know I had a shift from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on this day, and this is that recording. And you know what I mean? And so I guess once I began, I've only had to work at the hospital one weekend. This will be my second weekend coming up. And so I guess as I begin to accumulate them, then I will come up with something that's more streamlined. But right now, it's just by date.
Grand. I know other people have their spiffy recorders like you, and so having that audio organized can be very helpful. Stacy in the UK, did you have commentary, ma'am?
Yeah, hello to you, Gus, and to the rest of the callers. Apologies, I didn't hear a lot of the discussion, but I think I heard the tail end of Ivy's comments. And I guess it was about, again, non-white people being conflict or avoiding conflict with non-white people who are perhaps white identified or being uncodified in the workplace. I've been thinking about this because I did say that the new element to my code was on compassion, and I did find all the comments really useful, and I've been going back over some of the older archives because I guess this one is a challenging one for most non-white people, and I think for me personally, when I first, why this is so challenging is because when I first started working, I grew up in a household where my parents talked about racism, not necessarily, in the way that perhaps we would be discussing it now, but I knew that this thing called racism existed, and also things happening in the world around me made me very aware that racism existed, going to school, all those other things. I didn't necessarily think about racism in the way that Mr. Fuller describes it, or, the statement about being to suspect all white people, but I knew that white people had the potential to be racist. So when I first started working, that was already in my head. I didn't have any concept of how non-white people reacted to racism and the impact that it would have. And I, in my head, for all non-white people, understood this thing called racism. And so we would automatically be on code with each other. I also just didn't understand the sort of day-to-day dynamics of politicking in the workplace, that, the sort of competition elements and all those kind of things. So when I first really encountered non-white people doing things which I now, in hindsight, fully understand, and I think the first time it really happened to me in a way that impacted me, I understood some of the dynamics, and it was, a true to life plantation where I was working. But it was the most painful thing for me, because I think I had a concept of white people being racist. I didn't understand. I thought all black people got this thing called racism, so we would be supporting each other. And that was the hardest thing for me to get to grips with. And so it still bothers me now, not to the same degree, but even where I've gone through the grievances, the job that I worked for, and where non-white people have done things to mistreat me, and I've had to, in a way there's an element of strategy involved in that, but actually, I had to because of what they were doing. That upset me personally more than... Not that, I held them to account, but it was the most difficult thing for me to have to even be confronting non-white people in this way, because it doesn't sit right with me. So I think for me personally, it's that concept of understanding how non-white people react. And so even, for example, where the non-white female who manages the little race soldier who lied about me shouting at him, even though she did a couple of things along the way, the irony of it was I saw her making some mistakes that I had made in the current team that I'm in just being confident in her role. And I was going to speak to her because I was so concerned. This was before anything happened. And I knew she was very well identified. I just didn't know everything about her. And I thought, I'm going to speak to this person because I can see there's going to be a point where they do that switching on her, where they're accommodating her and pretending that they like her. And then there will be a point where it switches and it impacts on you. So difficult because, as we all know, if you're not expecting it, you're not expecting it. And somebody's told me, don't say anything to this person because she's very, very, very white identified. And then lo and behold, the situation played out as it did. And so, I'm just very careful about, and I'm sorry, I was glad that I didn't. So I just, I'm saying all of this because I hope it's helpful to other people, or, just explaining the dynamics of this. And I think for me, why it was so challenging, and, it's easy for me to deal with now, but, when you're confronted with it on a day-to-day, and it's a real, very personal, in-your-face attack, and it's a series of things going on, then it is challenging. But I think I'm getting better, but I've still got a long way to go. I mean, I certainly don't indulge in conflict. I avoid conflict like the plague, but it's just for me how personally I feel about it. So for me, it's not about attacking other non-white people, but it's just in my head getting to grips and really understanding that this is the psychology of how racism is strategized, and then how it impacts on all the non-white people. And I think it's just about us all getting to grips with that. And I'm conscious I've been speaking.
Like brother hell.
Sorry, was that?
Just being silly. Sound clip, sorry.
Okay. All right, I didn't hear. And then I'll come back if there's time. But yeah, just in terms of my overall code, I think I am getting better. I think I'm at 85%. Overall in terms of progress. So I am pleased, and I'm very pleased with the fact that I've not quite mastered the but I've neutralized my responses so that when some suspected and some confirmed racists want to engage me in conversations where they're just trying, why I call it the entrapment, where they're being very, very friendly and they're criticizing people, whether they are white or non-white, which I don't really think they're criticizing white people. I just think they try to gauge your views. I just give some very, very neutral responses, and I'm being very, very professional. And so, whereas people are trying to, I'm sure, get negative responses out of me that they can use against me, I'm just being very focused on the task, the objective of the goal. And so therefore, in the back of my head, I think a lot of what Mr. Ed Williams says, so just focusing on the solution and what we're trying to do, and how everybody has to feed into that process, and, acknowledging people's contributions, and, being very neutral in my responses so that nobody, as far as I can manage, has anything to take back and say that I was being inconsiderate against other colleagues, whether they are white or non-white. And I'll meet my line there, guys.
Stacy in the UK, make sure we get our obligatory timestamp, 3:27 a.m. Friday morning, chiming in to comment on workplace racism, live from the UK. Stacy's commitment to replacing white supremacy with justice immediately. She's been participating for a long time. And my sound clip again.
Black brother. Like brother hell.
Always love getting that one in clearly. I did want to comment, since we had the detour for the C.O.W.S t-shirt, and Emmy did mention getting up early, being on time and early for work, and being maybe 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, being early and being in a routine of being early, I think is spectacular. I think some of our other listeners have applied that to their workplace code, and it has worked. And whites have noticed, like, wow, this nigger is here early all the time. Like, I've had folks say that. And you might be able to get more done getting up early. My early AM yoga, I will be getting up tomorrow for the 6:15 yoga class. I got up this week for, I believe it was Tuesday, for the 7 a.m. yoga class. I had on my C.O.W.S t-shirt, and a black male, he was in a truck. He was sitting up relatively high. He was looking down on me as I was walking from the passenger side. And he yelled out from the window. He said, "Hey, brother, I love your shirt." And this is at like, I don't know, something before 7 a.m., very, very early in the morning. And I yelled back at him, "Don't call me brother." No, I'm kidding. Well, half kidding. But as I was walking, that it was quite a few people yelled at me that morning, which was strange because it was very early one and just all of it. But early morning wearing the shirt, got lots of rave reviews, and then did yoga. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if you have commentary, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, caller in Florida.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. That made me think about something, speaking of workplace racism. Gus, I think I've shared this maybe a few years ago, but there was this black male who used to always, it was almost like it was codified. He would walk around the courthouse calling every black person brother. I mean, like in front of white deputies, and a white person asked the question, "How come you didn't call me brother?" And I thought about that, but to start on my observations, because I sent you a picture of the well, I guess Ward number 1, the human resources white woman. She's been sending out emails about doing yoga on Wednesdays, so they do yoga classes at the like the downstairs area. So she participates in yoga. I know you mentioned yoga on the program, so I wanted to mention that too. But on a more serious note about the racism, my mom got a call from a former black female employee, and she was asking about contacting the warden about getting a position back, because in the other county where she was working, she wasn't able to get paid well enough, I guess. And the white woman in the felony department, she retired. So this person knew all about the department, and she should be able to fit in just fine. But apparently for months, and I think for at least a year, she hasn't even been calling her back. She would always say, "Well, we'll let you know when things open," and then whenever something is open and she applies, she doesn't get a call back. And she's been hiring white women and black females, and that could be done as a way to cover up or have some kind of victim referencing for when she is practicing racism. You got some black people that she can make an example of to say that she's not a racist. So, and I wanted to go on to my next example of another black female I speak to about workplace racism. She stated that a while back, her and 3 other black females, and I believe all of these females are potentially on that list of what the non-black female was mentioning, that the black male mentioned about underperforming people, whatever that may mean. And they used to go out to lunch together, and they would be in the break room together for a couple of months. So she said all of a sudden they broke that up by rescheduling the lunches for 2 of the 4 black ladies that were going to have lunch at the same time. So I wanted to share that one as well, because that was very strategic, because she said, in her opinion, that they were starting to, I guess, become afraid of them, I guess, quote unquote, being together and being together in harmony and not being in conflict. And they don't seem to be that well in their togetherness in the present day. So she gave me some history on that. And my next one is with the racial classifications. There was another couple that came in. They had asked about the racial classification list, and the black female was saying, well, what are you? And he says, well, I'm a little bit of Native American, and I got some black, and I got some white. And now, see, this is the male. Now, I guess I would say he would be what they call mixed or whatever that means, or racially ambiguous or whatnot. He was with a white woman, so that's a cowbell. So the white woman is dominating the conversation, and she's got a finger on the mouse, and she's looking at the list of classifications. She says, well, we always click other. She said something for her and him, but this is his her application, and she says we always click other. Now, she clicked white, but in order for speaking for him, she says we always click other. Is other on here? But other wasn't on there, so I think he ended up clicking refused, the refused option for race. And there was a comment that was made by a white woman who had her degree posted on her wall. I had said, is this what your name was? Like, this doesn't seem like the way your name is now. And she had like a 4-part name on her degree because I was bringing her envelope. And she said, yeah, well, I've been married about 4 or 5 times. And she said something else. And she asked me what was my last name, pretty much implying that she's been with me and a whole bunch of other people in a sexual way. At least that's what I took from it. So she bust out laughing after she said that. And now this is the same one who's been getting in trouble and are forced to attend these supervisor seminars. So she still hasn't been dealt with yet, ultimately. But in my last one, I wanted to share, this was a real venomous, sexually charged racist joke that a customer had stated to me over the phone. He said, and it was very like abrupt. He said, what do you call a black woman with braces? He said that, and then I asked him, what is it that you said again? And he said, what do you call a black woman with braces? So I asked him, I said, well, what is it? What's the answer? Because I wanted to write this down. And he said, black and Decker pecker wrecker. Okay. And I said, wow, I never even heard anything like that. So, and I didn't see now. I don't think that it caught me off guard, metaphorically, or I was somewhat alert for that. And I just asked him, was there anything else that he needed help with? Because he needed a court date. And he said, no, everything was just fine. And he said, I guess I'll get going. And he was kind of like giggling over the phone. I don't know if he could detect that I was a black person or what. I don't know. But he shared that racist joke over the phone. So I'm going to try and ask my supervisor, what is someone supposed to do when a customer shares a racist joke? And that's all that I have right now. So allow me to share.
Racist joke. I love it. the report from NPR, they said that white people spend as much, they lie, so it's probably more, but at least as much time looking for jokes like that as they spend looking for the Los Angeles Lakers, The Economist, anything else you can think of. Black and Decker, Pecker, Wrecker. Yes. Love it. The code. Write it down. Black, Decker, Pecker. Did you need help with anything else, sir? Neutral tone. Didn't crack a smile. Outstanding. That is the goal. I cannot wait to hear the response. What is, according to official policy, what should we do? Black and Decker, Pecker, Wrecker. What should our response be? Cannot wait to hear. Possessive adjectives. I've talked about that on the program many times. You know, it's not your office. It's not your desk. It's not your computer. Never thought to adding to the list. It is not your lunch break. They can take that away from you as well, or they can move the time. Extraordinarily strategic and vindictive. And that pattern, I think Red in Vegas had the same thing. Black people getting along, harmonious, great old time, being constructive. We do our little lunch break together. They see that. Oh no, get these niggers, broken up. We'll have them take lunch at different times. They love that sort of thing. They do not want to see their niggers cavorting and getting along in a constructive manner. We want them isolated. Makes it easier for us to abuse. They'll have each other to, lean on and support one another. The racial classification, that's the courthouse. I love it that they have the racial classifications because I think that's such an important aspect of how all of this system operates. So to see that and just that alone, we check other. Decision has been white woman doing the choosing. Said that so many times. The Grandcestor, Pam the Great, so many times. Is there anybody that we missed completely? Much obliged, caller in Florida. That is the job we were talking about before I get to other folks. He sent the photo of the race soldier who does the yoga class at the courthouse. Lots of whites, they realize yoga is great, wonderful for your body and everything else. We should take, maybe a little time once a week, once a month, and do a little yoga on the job. That is a job. That if you have a yoga certification like Gus T, that is a job. My black female pal, she was saying that that's the job that she wants here in Seattle. That's people have that job where you teach like 2 yoga classes to a group like that in a workplace setting. You do that like twice a month, and that's like a $5,000 contract for 2.5 hours of work. Anywho, any folks that we've missed completely have commentary? Do we nab everybody? Making sure I didn't miss that. Oops. People that we have missed completely that have a hand up.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus, callers and listeners. I have a strange scenario. I work at a place called Miller Industry. Excuse me. I work at a place called Miller Industry. We build record trucks. And where I work at, I've been working there for about 2 years in this particular department. It's one older gentleman who's been there for like 20 some odd years. And he gets abused. And I'm not sure if he does know this is happening. The reason I say that is because the other day, he normally goes around and he yells loud. He does no work whatsoever because he hurt himself and he sued the company. So they kind of just got him on doing nothing. And he's just there. So he goes around, he makes loud noises. He puts on a show.
and when he gets quiet, the suspects that we work with, they start calling his name because he's not making no noise, and right on cue, he starts it right on up. Now, I've asked him about this several times. It has gotten to the point to where we really don't even speak anymore because I asked him why he acts in that manner. That's the first part of the workplace racism, is me trying to communicate with him. He gets mad at me for asking him questions on that particular stance that he takes with the acting out in front of all of these suspects. The second part
Well, let's do one at a
that,
time. Let's do one at a time because I am a victim and I will forget. So the first one, because I can give you a thought on that really quick. Or at least for me, the anti-blackness is so substantial. I'm glad to hear that no one was called a coon in this exchange. But if it's sounding like it's going towards conflict, if he didn't ask for your help, he didn't ask for an inquiry, I would leave it alone. That would be my, because it seems like this is going towards conflict between the two of you, and you definitely don't want that. So, yeah, I would just would leave it alone. I mean, you got a lot of victims. There's a lot of that happens in the workplace. Mr. Fuller encourages us to not be the entertainment. You can just focus on yourself and make sure that you are not engaging in that behavior, and you can just do some planned ignoring, but I would just let that go if it's, you already said it's going towards conflict. Does that make sense?
yes, sir, it does. No conflict is just where you can tell when someone's been agitated, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that particular subject. The next one is that when I first got to this particular area, I used to get questioned a lot, and my response is always to question back. Simple questions, especially with the political. I can't even think of what I would like to say right now, but with everything that's going on in the political realm, these suspects will have questions. What do I think and what have you? So I would ask them questions. It's gotten to the point to where they don't want to talk to me about anything at all. So I am grateful of that. So most of the time I work by myself. We have a group, but they practice on me by not doing the work that they need. I just take care of it because I feel better doing it on my own anyway, whether I'm on the phone with my Bluetooth headsets or what have you. So I feel good about that. But today, in particular, I've never seen my suspected racist supervisor get on to any of the other suspects. Today, he chewed out this young suspect because he wasn't doing enough work. Now, the reason I bring that up, because it wasn't directed at me in any form or fashion, but this was a break in character out of 2 years of other suspects doing the same thing. And it put me on alert with the attitude change of the other suspects around me. I'm not sure because we just got another supervisor that's over my supervisor, a non-black, non-white female. She's Mexican, and like all of them hate her for whatever reason, other than her not being white. And I seen her talking to him, and I'm wondering if her coming down on him is making him uneasy. Meaning he can't just come through like he normally does. So I'm wondering, is that something that could potentially fall on me? And with that, I mute myself. Thank you.
How interesting. I will allow the listeners, if you all want to respond to the second vignette that he presented and or the first vignette about how he dealt with this victim who, I don't know, was entertaining suspected racists, how he dealt with that situation. Any folks want to respond to either of those two situations, or the second one primarily?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Retired firefighter.
I would say with the first instance with the other non-white black male that he reported that was yelling, I also would leave that alone. He said he expressed it one time, and it seems like he didn't respond. I would leave that alone because it's only going to breed conflict, and the races enjoy the idea of two non-white people fighting, so they can get rid of both of you, and that possibly can get rid of both of you in that case. So I would not join in on that at all. It is a argument to whether or not one would even make the attempt in the first place. But nevertheless, because we discussed that on the program many times, as far as something similar to that. And that's the one I would comment on. Thank you.
Much obliged. Any thoughts on the second vignette? While they're thinking, I'll make sure that I understand it correctly. You were started off, you said that on the job they would ask a lot of questions about things that are happening, and you, practicing counter-racist jujitsu, would turn it around and ask them questions. I guess you were doing your job so well that they just left you alone, which is exactly what we wanted to be. It did sound like they were practicing racism by not doing some of their duties. And you said you were okay with that because you just got to work by yourself unmolested and, would just do whatever the extra work. And then you said that you were concerned that I think it was some portion of one of the supervisor, I think it was a so-called Mexican who is in charge, female, and they don't like her for racism, white supremacy. And there was a concern about whether something not being done is going to be blamed on you. What were the details again?
Well, everything was correct except for not that it will be blamed on me. It's just the fact that this other gentleman that I was speaking of, like I said, he has won, 2 lawsuits against the company. Mm-hmm. So he's just there. I don't see him, unless he fires himself, I don't see him moving on. And he's been there for quite some time under these particular circumstances. Mm-hmm. What I mean is by something coming down on me is the fact that nothing else could be done as far as all of them being buddies. They push them around, and y'all have talked about this on the show many of times, to where they just get relocated, kind of like how the slave catchers get done when they do something on the job. They just move them around to a different area. But with me being the only other black person there, like I don't have no problems out of any of them, because I have already I tend to speak my mind, and normally I try to have measures with me, whether it be by phone or computer, to where I could prove whatever I was saying. And then, like you stated, I give my questions back, and they never can be answered, so they don't bother me so much. But I'm wondering, with the intensity of this supervisor on supervisor conflict, will that be a reason to start coming down on me, with me being the lowest on the totem pole?
Oh, well, my default, really, with any of the situations, racists generally do not need a reason to mistreat niggers. It's just, that's just the reality. He just said, I call in Florida, he just said the guy called in, I should have wrote it down. The Black and Decker Pecker wrecker. He just called into the courthouse for context. He wasn't just messing around on a Friday night. He was calling in, presumably for something official. You don't call the courthouse just to tell racist jokes, or do you? But that is what it means to be white. So they don't need a reason to mistreat you. Now, it might be that they have some additional frustration because, you know, they have the one nigger who's there who's got this lawsuit, and then the so-called Mexican, quote unquote, non-white person. They're upset about that. So, I mean, maybe, but again, they could mistreat you. They could not even be there. It could be all whites and it would still be the same thing. So, you know, I would continue just being codified, what you said about asking questions and knowing policy and procedure and making notes. I don't know what you meant exactly by speaking your mind, but I would just be very codified and ask more questions than making statements about things on the job, so that it's now there are two niggers on the job that cannot be fired, one who is codified and one who is not, but cannot be fired either way. That's the way I would be trying to function, so that I'm codified, so that I'm left alone. I can do my work, get all my promotions, and be there as long as you deem it constructive or valuable to be there, if that makes sense.
Can I be heard?
Codified software developer.
I just wanted to respond very quickly about the two supervisors. I assumed they were white. I didn't hear all the commentary.
One so-called Mexican. One is so-called Mexican.
Oh, one so-called Mexican. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. But frequently that happens where you'll have two more powerful people sort of beefing, I guess, for lack of a better term, and they will try to bring in a black person. I would, like Gus says, I would just remain codified, not get involved. I mean, I've had that happen several times where they've reported things to me and even told me to say things to the other person, which I did not do. So just stay out of it as much as possible, and hopefully they'll leave you out of it. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged. Any folks have suggestions for a person who just dialed in, or other folks? This is our last 2 minutes. 2 minute warning. 2 minute warning. Any other folks have commentary they wanted to get in last 2 minutes?
Gus.
Stacy in the UK, almost 4 a.m. Friday morning.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just in terms of conflict between the managers, just the general one, just to agree with the codified software developer, I would leave them to it. No matter, even if they're trying to get you involved, I would be just very neutral, not least because organizations change, so people move around in roles. And I've made this mistake myself, not because I was trying to get involved in conflict, but because sometimes you can just get drawn into things even when you're not trying to. The dynamics shift in organizations, so you don't know when that other person will become your boss or become an even more powerful person in the organization. I just leave the conflict between the two people and just stay as neutral as possible. Malangas.
Logical. Final comment? Anybody need to get in?
Can I be heard?
Imhan DC?
Yes, sir. It's at the end, but I had another kind of real quick question. So or maybe I'll save that for next time. Yes, you can just go to the next person.
Can I be heard, Gus?
Yes, sir.
Just to make clear, I'm not getting into any conflict with the black male nor any other supervisors. I just know that when something happens, we are always the first to be attacked. So it has nothing to do with no relationship with one supervisor versus the other. It's just a conflict between them two, and just waiting to see who will receive the punishment, whether it's a firing or a demotion or what have you. And that's what my question was. It's no sides to be taken, for me at least, but just knowing that with me, the one black older gentleman being secure with lawsuits, so have you, and me just being there. That's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's how I understood it. I'll just speak for myself. That's how I understood it. That was why in my response I said, make it so that they have two niggers who cannot be fired. One who is codified, that would be you, and one who is not. That's the person who has the lawsuit. And meaning you don't want to be collateral damage. Like you, I did, as I understood it, you were not, siding with the so-called Mexican supervisor or obviously the white supervisor. That's the way that I understood it. But seeing as they're upset, and then you have the black person who's filing a lawsuit that we have all this anger, we can take it out on you. We can fire you or, demote you or what have you. And that's why I said you just want to continue to be codified so that I know the handbook, I know the policy and procedure, what the expectations are. I'm asking questions. I'm on my counter racist grind. Normal day for me, continuing to do what I do. And I'm especially alert because I'm expecting that they might direct, things at me, which would be the case anyway. With that, did that make sense, sir?
Yes, sir, it did. Thank you.
Yes, sir. With that, we will call it a broadcast. We will be here tomorrow. Session number 2, Black Love is a Revolutionary Act. The late, the great Pamela Evans Harris. We're picking up on Chapter 9 for the audio segment. It'll be regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you did not get to hear the first audio segment or participate or, whatever, it is in the archives. It's not at iTunes. There's a technical issue that has prevented the last couple programs from being uploaded there. But it is in the Black Talk Radio Network archives. I think some people checked and it was not there when they looked, but should be there, confirmed, should be there and working. It's also at SoundCloud. Also, I think it's at YouTube at this point on Mr. Fox's channel. So you should have a variety of outlets to access the archives and the book study specifically. But that's tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Compensatory call-in Saturday, this coming Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you have comments, questions, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. Much obliged for everyone tuning in. I hope it was worthy of your time and energy. I will certainly emphasize sobriety would be best. It's pretty much, here it's autumn, but elsewhere as summer winds down, lots of excuses will be given for alcohol consumption over the next 4 or 5 months. They do that anyway, but especially over the next 4 or 5 months, sobriety would be best under conditions of white terrorism, especially anything workplace related. We would be best to protect our health, brain computers, to leave all of white's toxins alone. In addition to being sober, let's be buckled up every time we are in a vehicle, driver, or passenger. Let's do all that we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Black and Decker, Pecker Wrecker. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Mm-hmm. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.